Over, shot fire, officer down, shot fire, officer down. Got a city officer down, shot fire.
223, be advised, we have a visual on enemy paratroopers in grid Papa uniforms.
Welcome to the Resilient Warrior Nation, a podcast dedicated to inspiring hope and healing for first responders, military veterans, and anyone facing PTSD and trauma. Hey guys, welcome to another podcast episode of the Resilient Warrior Nation podcast. I'm your host, Mike Morgan. Super pumped for my episode today. First off, I just want to once again tell you guys that this podcast was created for veterans and first responders in the hopes that we inspire and give hope to men and women who are going through it. Exactly what was done for me by watching Eddie Penny on the Sean Ryan podcast. This is Eddie's company, Unafraid. It's not a proclamation. And I literally had the trajectory of my life changed by watching Eddie recount a story, and kind of spurred me to realize I had PTSD. And my healing journey began 14 months ago, which literally changed my life. And one of the things that I've done is create a podcast in the hopes of paying it forward and do for others what was done for me. So once again, today I have a very special guest. I am pumped. You guys are going to love hearing Roy's story. Let me introduce Roy Anderson. He was born in Boston, Massachusetts, where he was raised until the age of 16. In 1986, he had moved to Hollywood, Florida. In May of 1990, Roy enlisted in the Army and was first assigned at Camp Humphreys in Korea, followed by Fort McClellan in Alabama. In 1993, Roy was accepted into Special Forces selection, and after completing the Special Forces qualification course, the Q course, as it's commonly known, in 1994, he joined his first team in 95 and was stationed at Fort Bragg for 18 years. After becoming a seasoned NCO on an Operational Detachment Alpha, ODA, for 6 years, he transitioned to the Special Forces Warrant Officer course in 2001 and returned to an ODA team from 02 to 08, completing 3 deployments to Afghanistan and South America before retiring from the Army in 2015. Post-military, Roy spent 9 years contracting with the DoD, Department of Defense, providing training nationwide, and in 2024, he embarked on a new mission and opened his own handyman business. Roy is a proud husband, father of 3, grandfather of 4, and is absolutely one of the most humble guys you'll ever meet in your life. Roy, welcome to the podcast. I'm absolutely honored and humbled to have you on as a guest.
Yeah, thank you. I appreciate that.
Absolutely, brother.
Yeah, I wrote up that bio and just kind of trying to narrow things down as much as possible. I did do a 4th deployment to Afghanistan in 2012 and 13. That was as a senior warrant officer, and I was working at the battalion in an office job, so sometimes I don't always remember that one.
A deployment skips his mind. That's how much this man's done. That's amazing.
Yeah. But working in the office, you don't get the same, maybe the same feeling or the same sentiment when you're, running around out in the mountains and stuff with guys on your left and right and carrying equipment and doing that. So, yeah.
I can imagine. Is there something like 12 and 13 when you were there for that deployment? Is it something where every day you're just like, man, I wish I was out in the field, or was it enough for you at that point?
No, it was enough for me at that point, though, too. Physically, I was 30. I was 37 at that time. Excuse me, 43. Jeez. 43 at that time. So I was definitely feeling the physical abuse I put myself through. And so being in the office was okay. But yeah, you always have those thoughts in the back of your mind, like I wish I was physically fit enough to get back out there and run around in the mountains. And with old age, we can't always do that. So, yeah. It's still sitting in the office with we're still, this is kind of the mentality even then it was like, we're in the office, we're working, we're getting suicide bombers at the front gate. They're blowing up trucks and stuff like that. But at the same time, we're just like, oh yeah, whatever, no big deal. Going back to sleep, or I got to go back to work, or I got to get back in front of the computer to get some work done. So,
isn't it amazing? Like the threshold of violence and things that become commonplace. Like guys walk, suicide bombers, and you're just like, yeah, another one. Just nothing to you guys. It's incredible.
We used to, in 2004, we were getting rocketed and mortared so much. It got to the point where, we might get a rocket at night at 12 midnight, 1 and 2 o'clock in the morning, and everybody's kind of like lifting their head up out of their sleeping bag, like who's going to kind of go do, counter battery on that one? And everybody's like, we just want to go back to bed and go back to sleep. We'll figure it out in the morning.
That's amazing. Yeah, you just get used to the insanity. It's crazy. All right, brother. So let's start off at the beginning, kind of let people get to know you. You were born in Boston, Massachusetts. Kind of tell us about your childhood, family, upbringing.
Well, yeah, so I grew up it's actually a little, I was born in Boston, but I grew up in a little tiny town called Plimpton, Massachusetts. It's in Plymouth County, not far from the Plymouth Rock, the famous Plymouth Rock. And, growing up there was, I feel lucky because we were out in the boonies. At one point in time, both my mom and dad, they were neighbors and they grew up with each other. So like the entire street was owned by my grandparents. And so I was fortunate to have my grandparents, both sets of them there on that same street where I could run up and down the street and run out in the woods and disappear for half the day. And doing that, nobody was really concerned.
Yeah.
And, that's what everybody was doing and, going out in the woods, making forts, tree forts and it was a really good atmosphere for that as a young kid growing up, not being stuck at the time, not being at home stuck in front of the Atari set.
Yep, exactly. Atari.
Yeah,
We're showing our age there, being familiar with that system.
Yeah, my dad was a carpenter. My mom, she worked here and there, and she was generally a housewife, and my dad, he went, when he became a carpenter, all of us, myself, my two brothers, we were kind of set forward to go to vocational school, either become a mechanic or something in that field, or a carpenter, plumber, electrician. And for me, I just thought I was going to follow the same steps as my dad,
Okay.
Go to school, Silver Lake High School, go to the vocational school because I was more interested in carpentry. And then, most of the people around there, you turn 18, 19, 20, you got your high school girlfriend, you get married, and then you do whatever job you got, and you live and stay in that area. But I didn't choose that.
How come? What spurred you to go another route?
There was... when my mom and dad, when they got divorced when I was like 15, 16 years old, that's when my mom, she decided to leave the area when she got divorced, and she wanted to move down into Hollywood, Florida area. And for me, it was, there wasn't a question about doing it. I had this sense of adventure or a sense of, to me, it was kind of maybe a sense of freedom to get away from that town and actually, not that the town was bad or anything, but for me, I just felt like there was more for me to do other than, growing up there and staying there. So, taking that opportunity to leave and do that was, for me, I think it was a blessing. It was definitely culture shock, going from Plimpton, Massachusetts, a little tiny town, you're sixth grade graduating class is like 25, 30 people,
Wow. Yeah.
And then going down into the Miami area where the culture, it was just so much different, and for me, it was that was definitely a city life that I wasn't familiar with. Okay. The people that were in the school, the cultures, I think it was in the 80s, there was a big Cuban influence in that area.
Sure.
So listening to people to speak Spanish and all that. So it was just a lot different. It was really some culture shock that happened at that point in time. But
I can imagine.
But
did you like it?
I did. I loved it. It kind of, it was starting to feel that sense of adventure for me that I wasn't getting where I was growing up in Plimpton. So, there I decided to, because I grew up playing hockey, but then, at that high school, they didn't have hockey. So I transitioned from playing hockey to wrestling and playing football. I tried running some track a little bit, but my shin splints didn't allow that. So I didn't really pursue the track thing. But, cross country, that was part of my, I always did that on my own anyway. So,
Good.
But yeah, no, let's see. That's kind of my childhood. I had two brothers and a sister. I'm the youngest in the family. Growing up with my two brothers we were separated. I guess we were separated enough that I didn't really hang out with my older brothers. When they were like hanging out in high school and stuff like that, I didn't do that with them. So, I feel like I'm close to my brothers, but not. It wasn't. I didn't hang out with my brothers. Put it that way. They had their group of friends, and I had mine. So there was a lot of those times where I was still kind of, running my own track, and I was on my own. But there was enough people in town who knew that I had two older brothers, so then, I get away with probably more than I should have. Because people knew that if they played around or something like that, I had two older brothers that would take care of me. So
nice to have backup, baby.
Yeah.
That's great.
Yeah, but
can I ask you a question as far as, and I ask this for a reason, how was your relationship with your father growing up?
My relationship with my father was, I think it was okay. I definitely, he was, I hate to say it this way, but he was kind of an old school type mentality. He worked, and when he wasn't working, he was doing whatever, whatever he did,
Yeah.
He was kind of that mentality where, he was the man in the family. He got to do what he wanted. My mom was the housewife, and, she's supposed to be at the house taking care of us. And there were some activities I did do as a young kid that my dad didn't like to participate with. One of them was, I used to show horses.
Really?
My grandmother owned saddlebreds, and she had these championship saddlebreds that were beautiful horses. But throughout the years, she used all, including her youngest daughter, and then all her grandkids to ride all these horses and show them. And as a young kid, I was actually it was a saddlebred, but it was like a champion of all New England for showing saddlebred horses.
Oh, nice.
And I think that was in like 1980, 81 time frame.
Okay.
And, so that was in like, my dad didn't like participating in dealing with the horses and stuff like that. So there was a lot of time that I spent without him necessarily.
Right.
Where my mom or my grandmother was really involved and stuff like that. And yeah. So, my mom passed away in 2005, but my dad is still alive. And he actually lives just like a mile down the road from me now, where, I helped take care of him. And it was during COVID. He was up in Massachusetts, and he was just incapable of taking care of the house anymore. So the house was starting to go down, and we decided to sell the house and move down here, and where I could take care of him because he's losing his eyesight and stuff like that. So,
Okay.
yeah, I do that for him now.
Good. Hey, great to have son around. Great to have family around for stuff like that as you get older, of course. And, I had asked that because as I've gotten into the space of healing, I found that, and it's funny because during my 30-year police career, I never really spoke to guys about this, but I didn't have a good relationship with my father growing up. And, we get into these professions where they're not normal in some respects, man. Like, we're going towards when everyone else is running away from. So something has had to light these fires inside us. And I found that a lot of guys have not had good relationships with their dads growing up. And that's kind of been the impetus to light that fire. And in further speaking with some psychologists I've had on the podcast, and, people who are more of in a clinician setting, it's common knowledge that veterans and first responders have kind of suffered traumatic childhoods or not had great relationships historically with their fathers. And,
Right.
I asked most of my guests because I just want to see what their background is, number one. And number two, for guys watching who maybe suffered, these traumatic relationships, you may need to heal, even at the ripe old age of whatever it is that you are now as you watch this. If you suffered something as a child and you didn't get what you think you deserve, you still have to heal from it. We're all that little boy inside that's looking for that love, and, it's not coming. And for whatever reason, during those formative years, we didn't get what we deserved or what we think that we should have gotten. And, if that's you and you still have to heal, don't minimize that. It's a traumatic thing that you suffered in your life, and you still have to process the pain that you went through and heal from it and kind of put it to rest. I did that. Ayahuasca was very kind to me in that respect, and she kind of healed me, kind of walked me through a few things and healed me. And, when I think about things about my father that used to have that emotional charge attached to it, they're no longer. The memories are still there, but I don't feel the feelings that I used to feel. So it's just something to think about for some of these guys and girls, mostly guys.
I think one of the things that I did go through was, because he wasn't really the hands-on type father. He wasn't there at all the hockey games, or he'd always go to the baseball games. I kind of remember that, but it was like he would show up right after work, and then after that, then he'd go to the club. We had this place called the Upland Sportsman's Club in town, and it was kind of the local watering hole for us. Okay. So he wasn't necessarily a hands-on father with me, and there was, but I was fortunate enough. Well, let me step back a little bit. So I think that was giving me the independence and the thought process of like, hey, I just need to go do my own thing, because I wasn't necessarily with my brothers and I wasn't necessarily with my father. And but where I got really, really lucky is when I moved down to Hollywood, Florida. I had a wrestling coach and a football coach, and I looked to them for leadership. And that's what really, when I started playing those sports and I looked at those coaches, what I realized was that what I was looking for really in some form or manner was just leadership.
Yeah.
And my wrestling coach, Coach Lazat, incredible man. I mean, he set records across Florida for the number of wins with his teams and all that. And then our football coach, he was and this kind of one of the things that inspired me to go in the Army was he was prior service. He was in the Army, and I think he got out as an E5. But he brought everything he learned in the Army to the football team. And I remember seeing him running around with his schedule, and it was literally like almost like a minute-by-minute schedule, daily training schedule. And I didn't realize what a daily training schedule was until I went in the Army. And then I realized, like, oh, Coach, that's what Coach was doing, Yeah. And but just incredible leader. And I think it was in 1989, our senior year, we actually had a 10-0 football season, and it was, it was just because of his leadership and his training. And there was quite a few guys that come out of that program that he was running at our school. Some of them went pro, some went to big schools, really? Notre Dame, Eastern Carolina. One of the kids in my class played for the Gators and then ended up playing for Tampa Bay. And so I mean, for me, I think that's what I was looking at with my father was he just wasn't always. I didn't always feel like he was always there, or he was, and that kind of led me into just finding my own way. And that did affect me here recently when I started taking care of him. I had some, I had some negative thoughts because I was kind of, in some ways, I was feeling like, some resentment for that. And when I went to Mexico,
and having to take care of him, or not having him when you were young, the resentment.
No, needing to care for him now.
Right.
When he didn't, I kind of felt like I was like, he didn't do anything, as a young man for me, right. Or he didn't take care of himself growing up, and he hadn't really taken care of. He's one of these guys. He's drinking beer all the time. That mentality.
Yeah, yeah.
And but that was normal to him, and that was normal. Potentially would have been normal for me too if I didn't make some changes in my life.
Right.
But that ibogaine retreat, I had a thought process going through that ibogaine retreat, and I visualized him as a man at the age he is now, and then standing up and going down to being not quite a baby, but a toddler, and then going back to be, and I gained a little bit of humility in that, and understanding that he's just another man, just like you and I are, and he's just living the best way he can and the best way he knows. So it kind of gave me a little bit of understanding not to kind of harbor those negative thoughts, and he's got different life experiences, and it's okay. So.
Yeah.
So that helps me take care of him now too, and be a little bit more understanding with that. So
that's fantastic. You can live with that grace and show that grace and love towards him. Yeah.
Yep. Yeah. As tough as it can be sometimes, but how family is. So
yeah, exactly.
I sit with him sometimes, and we still argue back and forth and stuff like that sometimes, but. Or he's always telling me how I'm supposed to be doing things, but
Oh yeah, that's isn't that what a father does?
Yeah.
For the entirety of his life, that's pretty funny.
Yeah, exactly.
All right, so now you're finishing up school. You're thinking about vocational school, and what's kind of going through your mind now as far as making the decision?
Well, when I was like a junior in high school, I used to see the recruiter all the time, and. I used to harass him a little bit, and it was San Castillo, it was his name, and I used to harass him a little bit, and it was kind of funny because, as a junior, I'm like, hey, what are you doing? And just kind of blowing him off. Then as a senior, I'm like, holy shit, what am I going to be doing with my life? Well, then I'm like, he called me up one day and he talked to me on the phone, and I was just like, I'll sit down and listen to you, what you have to say and have to offer. And for some reason, same thing, getting out of Florida, having an opportunity to go do something else, live somewhere else, have another experience. To me, I didn't think twice about it. I sat down with him for like 15, 20 minutes. I was like, all right, let's do this.
Nice.
And at the time, I had a girlfriend at that time that I planned on marrying and all that stuff, and I did end up marrying her, and talked to her about it, and she was all for it too. So we went for it. San Castillo, I ended up seeing him a couple times throughout my career, and he ended up going to be a warrant officer also. But there was a shooting at Fort Bragg, I think it was in 1996 or 97. He actually ended up getting shot in the neck from that shooting and was paralyzed. Really a tragic scenario thing there. And there would have been more deaths, but there was some Special Forces soldiers that were actually running through the trails that morning, and it was an 82nd kid, and they actually jumped on him and prevented him from killing more people.
Thank God.
Yeah, I think I can't remember the guy's name, but just taking that opportunity to see it, like, I don't know. There was one thing he did say, which I kind of laugh at it still today. Sometimes he's like, "Oh, sign up for the Army for 2 years. You'll get stationed in the States." Because it's only for 2 years. They won't waste their money sending you overseas. Well, when I was in training, that's when the whole thing kicked off with Desert Storm and all that stuff.
Okay.
And then my orders come in, and boom, hey, you're going to Korea. And I was like, man, what happened to staying in the States?
Castillo! You lied!
But it was like, it was an unaccompanied tour also. So I was going to have to go there for 12 months and without my family and all that. Later, I found out that once I got there, my wife could go there, and she did, and then she got pregnant, and then my son was actually born at the 121 evac hospital in Seoul, Korea.
Wow.
And, that 121 evac hospital, you hear them talk about it on MASH.
Exactly. That's pretty funny. I knew it sounded a little familiar. I was wondering, I'm like, it sounds so familiar to me.
Yeah.
That is funny stuff. So now you're how old when you have your first child?
I was 21. Yeah, 20. Yeah, so I did follow that scenario, because I met my ex when I was 17, high school sweethearts, got married at 20, then went right in the Army, and then we had my first kid at 21, my second at 25. So my first house at 25 years old. It's kind of just one of those, kind of a typical scenario for, I guess, maybe our generation.
Yeah.
Growing up.
Yeah, it's amazing when you think about it now. I left my house for the first time at 25 to move to Atlanta. I cannot imagine being married, having 2 kids in a house at that age.
Yeah. And that is one thing I think that my father, he instilled in me was, to be honest, work hard. And for some reason, growing up, I always just thought having a family was like, I didn't think it. I felt it. That was the right thing to do, and it was something that I really wanted. And my son, he's 33 years old now, and he's got 3 kids, and his wife is talking about having 4 or 5. My oldest grandson just turned 12 years old, so it's like having those kids around me. That's incredible. It's like my kids' kids, and
can imagine.
One of the things I didn't really expect was that your grandkids, the unconditional love that you give your kids, translates to your grandkids also. And to me, that's incredible, because it's like, having them around and that, it's just motivation to be a good person, being around them. So
yeah, that's unbelievable.
It's incredible.
Good for you. So, all right, so we go back now, or you go to Korea for 1 year, and then you're coming back to
McLeod? Because of the Gulf War and all that, I ended up doing about 16, 17 months in Korea. Because of the stop loss and stuff like that. Ended up coming back, went to Fort McClellan, and just by coincidence, Fort McClellan was the same location my grandfather went through basic training in his initial infantry training prior to deploying to Italy. And and he was in Italy, and he was wounded by I think he explained it to my brother one time. He got hit by a grenade and got fragged in his back. And so he got a Purple Heart for all that, and he got redeployed home. So I was kind of like living and working on the same place where he his old stomping grounds. And so that was kind of interesting. But it was there. I had a friend of mine, Dave, and one day he was talking about, hey, we got these SF guys coming here to give a PT test, and to see whether or not if we would qualify for the selection course. And so I was kind of like, okay, I didn't really know much about it, and just in conversation. But while I was there, also I went to the sapper school from that location, and that was
what's the sapper school?
Sapper school is a light infantry course for engineers, and being an engineer, you're expected sometimes to work with infantry, so you have to understand their tactics and techniques, and so it's a course out of Fort Leonard Wood, Missouri, and they spend 30 days where you do air operations, light infantry tactics. You concentrate on explosives. Explosive training up to skill level 3, and that there like really instilled to me that I wanted to take my job further than what I was doing. And so when the opportunity came up for selection, I went and we took the PT test, we qualified for that, then we get a school date, and I ended up going to Fort Bragg in October of 1993, and going through selection. The selection is a 30-day event, and basically I would say a big portion of that, they concentrate on sleep deprivation. You're only allowed 4 hours a night to sleep, and but which doesn't necessarily sound bad, but when you're like on day 15, 16, day 20, and you're doing 2 events a day, and you're not getting the sleep that you should have, it really does wear you down. And the culmination of that is like a 25-mile ruck march that you're doing. You start around 6, 7 o'clock, and then I think we finished like when the sun's coming up, and
Wow.
I can't remember the exact details on it, but it was something like that. But you're just basically walking all night, and to the point where, physically you're wore out, mentally you're wore out, and then once you finish that, you spend a day of recovery, and then they let you know whether or not if you made it or not. And I was fortunate enough to be selected, and that was, there was. I had people in my life at that point in time at my work, like, oh, you're not going to make it, that kind of concept. And, oh, that's the hardest thing. I remember one guy talking about, oh, you better go get your DNA, recorded, because this is going to be something like, crazy, whatever. And that's just like, thinking, what are you talking like that for? There's a lot of negativity, how that
Yeah. Oh, yeah. It's amazing.
But,
it's jealousy and, just, it's amazing. Instead of like propping your friend up, everyone's sitting here shooting down. I'll never understand it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so I went, ended up PCS in Fort Bragg in April of 1994. Went to jump school, and we started the process. It was about between getting to Fort Bragg and then finishing everything up. It took about a year to get all the way through the course. Because I had to go through jump school, and then I went through a pre-ranger course, and to kind of hone down some of my small infantry tactics. And then I finally got my class date, started that, and I went through the winter and finished up language school. And for my language, we concentrated on Spanish. And I was appointed to go to 7th Special Forces Group, and their area of operation is South Central America. And so they send you through language school, and then I reported in, I think it was give or take around June of 1995.
Okay,
And,
so you do not have to become a ranger first in order to qualify to become a Green Beret.
No, you don't.
Correct.
No.
Okay.
No, matter of fact, they have some programs. I don't know if they're still running them or not, but once the war kicked off in 2001, around give or take 2002 and 3, they started they restarted a X-ray program where they were taking kids right off of the street and sending them through the Q course. At one point in time, they were accepting 18-year-olds, but then, looking through the statistics, they weren't making it through the course, so then they changed it to 21 years old. And then those kids were, the statistics on them were satisfactory, so they were able to go through. And I remember in 2004 and 5 when I did my deployment, they were all older guys, and that had been around for a while. And then my trip in 2007, it was like the team completely changed over, and they were mostly just X-rays or new guys to the team.
And what are your thoughts? Like, so in other words, you do not have to have a deployment or two under your belt to become a Green Beret at this point?
No, at that
Correct?
point, no. You could come right off the street, go through all the training, and then end up on a team, and then you're deploying to Afghanistan or Iraq, depending on your area of operation, or even South America.
And what's your thoughts on that, as opposed to having to, have more experience, go through a deployment or two? Do you think that's better?
I think it's hit or miss, and I say hit or miss for those guys, but it's also hit or miss for the active duty guys. I worked with some guys that came right off of the street, and they were incredible. And they worked hard, they were smart. And a lot of those guys, they're just really smart kids. So, I didn't really see a problem with it. And I still stay in contact with some of those guys. And even after they get out of the Army, I would say the only real difference between it is that when you're getting X-rays off the street, they're there to do their 4, 5, or 6 years and then get out. Where if you're getting someone who's been through and in the Army, they're there long term to do 15,
Career.
20 years or 25 years.
Okay.
But that did kind of, I think, I don't know if you want to call it a problem or not, but it did create a situation where every 2 to 3 years you were having a full changeover of your team. Versus before that X-ray program was enacted, you were working with teams and you were working with the same guys for 4, 5, 6 years, 7 years, and then they might leave the team, but they're still within the company or within the battalion.
Right.
I spent before I did my first SWIC tour, the training group. I mean, I was in the battalion working on the team for 12 and a half years straight through.
Wow.
And yeah, so, and there were a lot of guys around from, the 90s that were with me still doing that kind of stuff.
Okay.
But then you see the younger guys that were coming through the X-ray program, they were coming in and then boom, 2, 3, 4 years, they were gone. A lot of them ETSing out of the Army or going to any group. Leaving the Army, leaving service.
All right.
To ETS. That's an Army acronym. I can't remember exactly.
I know you guys have more acronyms than it's like volunteer fire department, man.
Yeah.
They'll speak like acronym after acronym. I'm like, bro, I have no idea what the hell you just said.
Yeah.
That's hilarious. So, all right. So now you get to your. Do you call it a team or you call it detachment? Do you guys call it ODAs? Like
A team, ODA, detachment, operational detachment alpha is what the ODA stands for. Yeah.
Okay.
So all those terms are used. So when I got to the team in 1995, I'm really going to GRTC down in Fort Polk, Louisiana. That was like training at a battalion level type training. We went out to San Diego for 3 months, and we were working with JTF-6 missions and doing training, call them training patrols alongside the border. And then working with the San Diego Police Department. We're actually working with a SWAT team out there, training them on air operations.
Oh, really? I didn't realize that military trains, civilian personnel. Although the SWAT team is still civilian.
With the JTF-6 mission at that time, there were different agencies that were able to, and it wasn't necessarily. It wasn't necessarily that we were training them. It was kind of like an exchange of training. So, they would train us on shooting, and then we would train them on air operations, and it was kind of like a cultural exchange almost, you could say.
Yeah.
It wasn't specifically to go out there and just train them, but that was, I think, the Democratic Convention was going to happen in San Diego in 1996, and that's why we were out there helping out the SWAT team.
Okay.
And, so they were preparing and getting themselves prepared to be, on call for that. Then let's see, going to Costa Rica. Spent like 6 months in Costa Rica training with the police down there, teaching them light infantry tactics. That was incredible.
Now, you guys like doing operational stuff with them?
No.
Okay.
Just training.
Just teaching. Okay.
In South and Central America, it's very rare do you actually get to do anything operational. Most of it's just training. They call it, there's like JSATs, FID missions, foreign internal defense missions, where you go in there and you're helping out train their units to prepare them for whatever they may do. But a lot of that was going on in Colombia, Peru, Ecuador. Those were kind of the 3 central places. But, there were even teams that went to Chile and Argentina, Bolivia. And there was like multiple different types of missions too, because sometimes we would go into embassies and we would do some types of security missions within the embassy and work with them with different agencies and stuff like that. So that was always really, really interesting. Going to Peru, in Peru, we get to travel the country, going to Iquitos, Pocopa, and then living in the city in Lima. That was an interesting mission, and let's see, that was kind of my NCO time.
Okay.
From '95 to 2001, and learning Spanish, working with them, training missions kind of all over the United States also.
Okay.
And at that time, we were concentrating mostly on light infantry tactics, jungle type training, because we were working in South America.
Right.
And and when in 2001, when I submitted my packet to go to the warrant officer course, we were I was in the process of starting the course when 9/11 happened. And
where were you on that day? I asked most of my guests specifically on that day. How did it unfold for you?
Yeah, no, I do. Well, I remember the day obviously because of 9/11, but it was actually I had the day off that day, and I was going to my buddy's place to pick him up because we were going to go golfing that day, and I'm listening to the radio and I'm listening about the plane that hit it and some type of accident, and then I go to my buddy's house and then we're watching the TV, and then the second aircraft hit, and then Fort Bragg was a nightmare after that happened. There were people sitting out on the on the highway get into Fort Bragg.
Yeah.
Sitting there for 8 hours because nobody could leave, nobody could get out.
So you just lock it down.
It was just a mess, and I'm sure you understand how that all happened. But that was my day, and at the time, how significant and how big of a change it was going to be for my life and for America in general. I didn't. You couldn't have really thought about what was going to happen.
No, not the scope of what was unfolding. You couldn't imagine it. So after that, it was like, I continued, moving forward, going to the warrant officer course, and I knew. Can you explain what warrant officer is and that course, like what it's going to allow you to do?
Yeah, so as an NCO, an uncommissioned officer, and then you have a warrant officer. And a warrant officer, he's kind of, he's a person that they have a position on the team, and his job is to maintain the continuity for the team. And I say that because I'd go through the course, and then I'd spend another 6 years on a team. Whereas your captain on the team, your team leader, he might only spend 18 to 24 months on a team, and then he's gone.
Okay.
And then same thing with the team sergeant. He'll spend 24 months on a team, and then he's gone. And then when you get a new team sergeant, and then you get a new team leader. So, as a warrant officer, I had different, the team leaders, the captains, they were coming and going all the time.
Yep.
And the same, not necessarily the same for the team sergeants, because they're usually there a solid 24 months, sometimes a little bit longer. And then sometimes there might be chosen from somebody who's already on the team. So those guys, their stability is a little bit better than the officer, but the officers, they're coming in, they're getting their time, and they're getting their position, they're going on to the next job. And so as a warrant officer, I'm there to maintain the continuity, the staff manager for the team, in charge of, in some cases deploying the team, in charge of the intel for the team. And then sometimes wherever I can fill in, there might be a gap somewhere where I can cover down on one day, because I do have the experience. I had 6 years of experience as an NCO on the team also, and where I was the explosives expert. So, I was very familiar with that, and if I could fill in there, sometimes I would. I mean, the scope of it is really so huge because sometimes, you get personalities that go into this, and then each team in some form or manner is different too, because you've got your Halo teams, you've got you got some teams that concentrate on intel, and then scuba diving, and so sometimes the tasks even within the teams can be very different.
Okay. So essentially, almost like a liaison between the officers and the men, and you're basically it sounds like the go-to guy, like you are. The boys go to you before they go to the officers, and voice whatever problem is. You handle everything. You put out all the fires. Like you're the man.
Yeah, and especially when you deploy, preparing for deployments. That was like one of my main responsibilities. Where you're getting all your documents in place. You're getting all the all the blocks checked off that you need for the team, the medical, the weapons and inventories and different items like that. And, they call it like the top three. On the top three, I was the one that stayed there for 6 years, and the other two, they were coming and going over that 6 year period. And working with those guys, I get to work with some incredible people. Those, a lot of, it was kind of a lot of the officers I did work with were West Point grads. And,
really?
So these guys are coming in, and they're physically fit, they're mentally fit, and they know that they're for short term, so they're hard charging, They want to get things done. They want to make things happen. And so sometimes I was like the one who's like, hey, let's just slow this down a little bit.
Yeah.
Let's concentrate on this part. And then the same thing with the team sergeant. He was the one who was hard on the guys. He was in charge of the guys on the floor and that were actually getting all the work done and doing all the training. And I got to work with some incredible team sergeants too. There's one specific individual, SAR. He was awarded a Silver Star back in 2005 after we got into a situation where we were clearing bunkers on this mountaintop, and he got shot in the head, fell back, and the bullet got enlarged all through his helmet and didn't actually injure him. Physically.
Yeah.
And it definitely probably got a pretty good concussion off that, but he got back up, got back in the fight, and actually went through that bunker and cleared it. And, that was one of the guys that got a Silver Star from our team on that trip. And there was another individual, Dave. He had to run some people down after a fight started. And, it's like you've got all these guys on the team, and they're literally like pro athletes.
Yeah.
Physically, mentally, they're running around up and down, and they're doing all this with 60 pounds of equipment and ammo and guns on them, and it was crazy.
Some hardcore motherfuckers. Excuse my French, but no other way to describe them.
And to think about it, to think about what we were doing at that age and what they were doing at that age. I mean, the physical and mental toughness that it took to get all that done. To think about, oh man, let's go back and do that. I'm like, oh my God, I don't even know how I went through it myself,
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it's amazing when you see yourself as a young man doing these things.
So going through the warrant officer course, we went down to Fort Rucker, went down there for our initial training, then went back up to Fort Bragg for our specific special forces training for that, and then went right back to a team, and then and that was in give or take in 2001, and immediately we started training. And at that point in time with the special operations, there was kind of a change in focus on training, especially with 7 Special Forces Group, because we were always concentrating on small unit infantry tactics, jungle training, FID training, foreign internal defense. But there was a course we call it SFAWIC, and we started. That's like the door kicking type training that we went through, and we started sending individuals and teams through that type of training, and specifically, pre-mission training for Afghanistan. And my first deployment to Afghanistan was in 2003. In 2003. We deployed, 2nd Battalion was already in Afghanistan, and we were from 1st Battalion, and they took about 5 or 6 teams from 1st Battalion and sent them to help support them and to help support 20th Group that was deploying to Afghanistan, just to kind of augment them. And actually, our team, we got put in Kunduz. It was a place called K2 in Uzbekistan. And from Uzbekistan, that we deployed from there into Afghanistan in multiple sites throughout our deployment there.
How many members encompasses a team?
We got 12 guys. You got
12 guys on the team.
Yeah, you got 2 engineers, two communication guys, 2 weapons guys, and then 2 medics, and then you've got your top 3. And I think that come up to 12. I had to bust out my fingers to get that.
Top 3, meaning officers.
Oh no! Well, your top 3 is your team sergeant, your warrant officer, and then your captain.
Gotcha.
Yeah, and so then all the way from Kunduz to, if I can, Mazar Sharif, and then Herat were the 3 locations that we deployed to in 2003, But we broke our team up to do that, and we were just doing doing recons and evaluations of the camps and bases, and then we all came together back to K2, and we'd come up to do a long-range recon from Herat all the way up to just south of Turkmenistan, and going through the Baghdad's Providence is the name of I think it was Baghdad's Providence. So we infilled into Herat, and we didn't have any vehicles. We didn't have any Up Armor Humvees, so we just rented a bunch of Hiluxes.
Really?
And then we're also just staying downtown in some, in like a home that we rented. And so we get everything in there. We bust out all the welders. We're welding on 50 cals and 240s on the back of these Hiluxes, and I'm strapping down MRE boxes to just sit on them and sit behind the 50 cal, and then we spent 30 days doing a long range recon all the way through the Baghdad's Providence. And on that first deployment, we didn't see any action at all. There was no battles whatsoever.
Wow.
And it was really kind of the initial stages of some of the stuff that was, it was kind of the initial stages of the Taliban and in that area, I don't think they're called Taliban. There's a group of people up in that area that were forcing the farmers to get rid of their wheat and all that stuff and their usual crops, and they were forcing them to grow poppy and marijuana, but they were creating the conditions to make that happen. So they really had no interest to really do anything, or they didn't perceive us as a threat at that point. And I think that's why we didn't see any action. And we would go to the people and we would talk to the people in charge there, and we were just like, hey, we're here to kind of get a better understanding of what's happening here. And there was a family that basically dominated that whole area. And it was kind of funny because we were getting to the point where we had to be very careful about documenting our photos of the local officials, because we were starting to, like, one town to the next, we were starting to get the photos potentially mixed up, but they all looked the same. And they weren't they weren't like your typical Afghani that you might see on TV. These were like more kind of Russians. I mean, these guys were like 6 foot, 6'2", 6'4",
really?
250 pounds,
Damn.
Big, the big, huge black beards,
Yeah.
But those were the officials that were taking up all the positions to set the conditions to create an area to cultivate poppy and marijuana, and so they didn't really see us as a threat, so they just didn't mess with us. So we did our recon, we came back, did this huge book with everybody, turned it in, and but it was a good adventure though too. I mean, it was spending 30 days living in the back of a truck on sitting on MRE boxes with a 50 cal in front of you. I remember there was one night that I remember we were trying to go over this bypass. And one of the things about Afghanistan, it is one of the most beautiful places I've ever seen in my life.
Really?
It really is. It's unfortunate it's not a place for ecotourism, because really you could if you wanted to. And but we got stuck up on this mountaintop. There was a backup on the north side of the mountain pass, and so we backed up off of that, got on the mountaintop, and we actually it was rained on, and then it froze that night. And when I was waking up in the morning, because we were like pulling guard duty and pulling shifts, and I was like breaking the ice off of my poncho. But that night, to keep a fire going, the village, they offered us a little bit of wood. But then there was a coal mine on top of the mountain. They offered us some coal and gave us some coal too. I was just like, this is like out here in the middle of nowhere, and there's a coal mine here.
Yeah, it's weird. And I'm assuming they're doing mining by hand, basically.
Yeah.
Or rudimentary tools.
Yeah, and so that was 2003, and then we immediately went back home after that, did another PMT, another SFAWC, that's your Special Forces Urban Combat Training.
Okay.
And
how long was your first deployment now that you just came off?
That was only 90 days.
Okay.
It was a 90-day rotation for us, so it wasn't even really that long. And then
how come so short, Roy?
What's that?
Why so short of a time period? Like, I thought it was like double that or something.
No, it is. It's usually 9-month deployments, but because we were augmentees to 20 Special Forces groups, we were just there to help support them for a short period of time. And
Gotcha.
It was 90 days. Yeah, 90 days.
Okay.
And so then we went back, and then at this point, our SFAWC wasn't just individual teams. It was individual teams and company-size operations. and so that we were preparing ourselves to go back to Afghanistan in 2004, and we ended up deploying. September of 2004 was the ADVON, the advanced teams that went in there and went out to the outstations to prepare to receive everybody, and my team and it was our company. We got attached to 1st Special Forces Group out of Bagram, and then the rest of our battalion went to Kandahar and operated there as a battalion. So our company in 2004 was actually attached to 1st Special Forces Group, and we were in the southeastern portion of Afghanistan, in that one place I talked about, Lawara or Camp Tillman, Organy. Okay. I think there was another camp north of us. I can't. Shkin was the other one south of us. And immediately on that deployment, I think it was like within like the 3rd week, we had one soldier get hit an IED, lost his leg. That was fortunate, and he, fortunately he recovered and actually stayed in the Army and I think he
really?
I think he maybe even retired.
Wow.
And
operational.
I heard a story about him later that it was somebody was giving him a hard time because he parked in the in the disabled parking spot.
Yeah.
But because he was so good at using his prosthetic leg that nobody could tell that he actually had it. And he's like, "Hey man, I got missing my leg here." And they're like, "Oh, okay." But and that deployment to Afghanistan in 2004, that was, for me, it was definitely one of the most difficult deployments as far as living conditions, logistics. It was, but at the same time, it was one of my favorite. It was one of the funnest also.
Okay.
Kind of, that whole mentality of like, you're living in complete, hard conditions, but somehow when you leave, it was like one of the best times of your life.
It's amazing.
Yeah.
So what kind of conditions are we talking about?
Well, so when we got there to the camp, it was a location that was just kind of, I would say kind of strategically chosen, to kind of get some cover in and around us. We had OPs that had to be covered down around our camp, up on top of the mountaintops. But so we got there in September, and all the buildings that we were living in were just still mud huts. And yeah, so mud huts, mud floors, and that year was the most rain and snow they've had in like 20 or 30 years. And then with the mud roofs, the rain is coming through the roofs, and then I was like inside our building that we were all sleeping in. We're sleeping on cots and we're sleeping bags, but then we had to put like these poncho tents over our bunk so we weren't getting wet at night.
Yeah.
The heat in the room was just by like these kind of potbelly stoves that were manufactured in the local town that were like really cheap and didn't work very well. The Afghanis did all the electrical, and so we were burning up generators left and right. So we were lucky to even have one running at times.
Yeah.
And so when I went in there, seeing all this, our team took the responsibility to rebuild the camp. And over that 9-month period, we did rebuild the camp, and we created like a small barracks for ourselves, and we created buildings with tin roofs and wood frame roofs to keep the rain off, and improved the electrical system so we could have electricity and heat and/or air conditioning. So it was just, I don't know if we even had hot water. If we did sometimes, it was kind of one of those things where you're spending 9 months with baby wipes trying to wash yourself and clean yourself and just keep yourself from growing fungus and then at the same time while all this is happening, you've got 107 rockets hitting your camp all the time. You got once or twice a week they're mortaring you. If you go off the camp, they're trying to ambush you, and then at one point in time, I think we had probably almost a battalion-sized element on the camp, and we could barely take care of them all.
Wow.
We had some Afghan.
How many guys is that approximately?
Probably 300 to 400 people in the camp.
Wow. Okay.
Between the Afghani ASG, the Afghani security group that we had with us, then we had the Afghani Army company with us with some Marines that were liaison with them.
Okay.
And then we had the 82nd guys with us, and then all the camp helpers, and then our team. And at one point in time, we had two teams on our location. And it was that Camp Tillman was if you went to like going through Bagram, and hey, what camp you going out to? And you're like, oh, going out to Lawar, and they're like, oh, geez, you're going out to Lawar. Good luck with the rockets, because they'd be rocketed almost every day, and like on Christmas they decided to do it twice a day for us that night. So that was kind of
Merry Christmas, boys.
Yeah. And the Afghanis, they had the rockets down pat. They knew exactly how to aim them and set them up, and they would use a time fuse, so they would be able to set it all up, leave the area, and then it would go off. So it got to a point where, like, to do counter battery against those, it was a waste of time because
they're already gone.
Yeah, they're already gone
In the wind. Damn.
And so we spent that whole 9 months doing surveillance sites, trying to catch them out there doing that, and then me and another small team at one point in time, we got to conduct an ambush on the I call it the ambush platoon. They were out, moving through the area, and we ended up catching them out there and conducted an ambush on them. And this is 2000.
This was the fight that you and I was speaking about earlier?
Yeah.
That resulted in a bronze star?
Yeah, the bronze star with Valor device on that one. And that was, it was like still hunting for deer out there.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I mean, because you're pulling up on all these different surveillance sites. You don't know if they're going to be there or not. You're trying to catch them exact time, and it was just really difficult. But then their ambush platoon, they had us, pinned down. They knew exactly where we were at, when we were going to be at. If we were going outside the camp, they knew exactly when and where we were going to be because they got all the informants along the border, and they can just sit up there and watch us and without fear of the local populace, ranting on them. And that was always a fear for us, with the locals either on our camp, informing on us or just, trying to, potentially try to target us on the camp and stuff like that. We even had an incident one time where we thought it was an inside attack, but it really wasn't. So it's just like being super hyper vigilant about it.
Yeah, I can't imagine that.
Yeah.
Seeing these guys on a daily and knowing that some of them are definitely cooperating with the enemy, and just how can you feel secure? I mean, literally, you have to be hyper vigilant 24/7, but you can't be hyper vigilant 24/7, and you're going to lose your mind.
Yeah. Yeah, I think but you are hyper vigilant 24/7.
It's amazing.
And that's some of the issues that when people come back, they don't always understand that you don't need to be that when you're at home.
Yep.
And you're spending your days 24/7. You've got your gun. You've got multiple guns you're carrying around with you. And you're not leaving camp. And if you are in and around camp, people know where you're at, when you're at, what you're doing. We've got observation posts on the high ground around us, keeping an eye on us on both sides, the hypervigilant. It's just you become accustomed to it, and it's just normal after a while.
Yeah. What a high stress environment, though.
Yeah.
Every day. Now, are you guys like actively getting in gunfights? On a regular basis?
On that rotation, I can't remember exactly how many we actually had, and that was really having gunfights was on that rotation specifically wasn't really that many. I think it was maybe 6 or 8, maybe 1 or 2 more, but the counter battery with the 105s, that was like every other day. With the mortar attacks, that was once or twice a week, sometimes more depending on the situation. A lot of it depended on the moon cycle, and because they didn't have NVG, so they wait for the high moon or the full moon, where they can maneuver around at night in the mountains without a problem. but there was, yeah, I mean, several ambushes. I remember sitting in the talk one day and SAR, he was getting ambushed, and fortunately he had Overwatch with him, helped supported him. He's talking to me, got air on the station with some close air support. And I mean, the close air support with the A-10s, I hear that.
That's a Warthog? Warthog?
Yeah, the Warthog.
Yeah, those things are badass, man.
Yeah. I mean, I still hear them, like where I live now, I'm near the Eglin Air Force Base, so sometimes if there's a training event, I can hear them shooting and stuff like that, and it still makes me smile.
I can imagine hearing that sound when you guys need it, man. What a feeling that must have been, those guys rolling in.
It's incredible. It's I kind of feel bad because I've never actually got to meet them.
Oh, no?
Yeah, I mean, I've depended so much on them, and I'm so grateful for them, but I've never actually got to, just tell them, hey, thank you,
Yeah.
and meet the crews, and probably those crews at that point in time, they're potentially, retired and all that, so they're not around, but, those guys, incredible. The Marines with I think their aircraft is called the Cobra.
Yep.
We had one of those guys with us on. We were doing a air recon along the mountain range on the east side of Skin, and for whatever reason, a squad of Taliban, they thought it would a good idea to like come out of their bunkers and start shooting at us while we're in the aircraft. And maybe they thought they were just going to scare us off, but no, that just made us land. So we did the squad. I call it a squad. Our team, basically, we're just dumping out of that aircraft, and we're getting online, and we're chasing them down, and we're shooting at them, and they're clearing all the bunkers. That's when my buddy Sar got shot in the Kevlar.
Okay.
Knocked him back, and he ended up clearing the bunker, and he got his. I don't know if it was he got a Silver Star for that, but I think maybe there was another guy given a Silver Star for that also. But so we went through that whole process that day, and I mean just another incredible day. I think, but that was like one of the ones like that. I mean that was like within 25 meters or 25 yards,
wow.
On some of that, and. I was going to mention the Cobra with the Marines on that day when we're using him because we're using him for close air support. And his aircraft at that period in time, they didn't have all the electronics for targeting. And they would target by just looking outside the aircraft. And like the Apaches, they can sit at like 6,000 to 7,000 feet, like, half a kilometer away, and they can sit there and they can target with all the computers and everything, and they can shoot, however long they can shoot at. And that's how they would support you. But this Cobra guy, I mean, he's coming so low and just like buzzing us over the head. And he's like sweeping through through the draws and downloading his gun on these guys. And, those another incredible group of men that I'm so thankful for.
I
never get to tell them thank you either, so.
Yeah, some badass dudes. It was funny. We were in ceremony over the weekend. This past weekend, we volunteered, and I got to talking to one of the attendees. He was a crew member in the 160th of Black Hawk crew, and just super, super nice guy. But I was just like, you guys, man. I mean, the crew members are like all stars as well. Like I didn't realize that. We got into a long conversation. It's not just the pilots. Like every guy that works on those is also an all-star, has to get chosen, application process, additional training. So everyone associated with them is badasses. Yeah.
Well, for the 160th guys, think about everything that, that a pilot would do or that crew. And the preparation, the combat training, the guns, all right? But they do it at night. They don't do it during the day. Every mission they do is at night. So so everything they do is like MVGs, and the difficulty of that's incredible. So for those guys, I guess the difficulty on that is great, and I appreciate them too. I remember getting infield with them more than once, and at night too, and being thankful that they just hang out around with us for a little while, knowing that they had the guns up there to support us. So
yeah, I can imagine what a great feeling that is.
And well, let's see. And so in 2004, we went 2004 into 5, and then that was, the different contacts we had. That one I mentioned to you earlier. The last contact that I had, I don't think, no, it wasn't my last one. It was, I think it may have been the last one. The last one where I conducted that ambush.
Yeah.
And so again, that was another one that was, anywhere between 25 and 500 meters away, because they had the platoon all spread out going through that valley.
Okay.
Or the draw going up over the peak of that mountain. And, I had the 2 guys with me, and then the 3 Afghanis too. And that whole day was just, people risking their lives, running around, being shot at, and shooting back without a thought for their own safety. And seeing people do that, one of the things I realized, and we always talked about it, but seeing how those guys on that team operated at that point in time, it absolutely, without a doubt, instilled in me that you will fight as you train. And so how important it is to train and to do things correctly, and it doesn't have to be anything crazy either. It's just like learning the basics, understanding the basics, and doing it.
Yeah.
And when you do it enough, and all that just comes natural. It's like when we all downloaded that aircraft, we all just like, the guy is shooting at us, but we're all just like, it doesn't matter. We need to get online and get, so everybody has their sector of fire at that point in time. And then we're going through bunkers, clearing them, and everybody's just stacking up at the door, throwing grenade, going through, clearing. And there's no thought for your personal safety at that point, to a certain extent, obviously. I mean, we're doing the procedures that we were taught to keep ourselves safe. And, but, you absolutely, without a doubt, you will fight as you train. And if you don't train well, then you won't fight well.
Great point.
And seeing those guys do that, and I just feel really lucky, and and grateful they were with me. Those guys too, because they didn't hesitate.
Yeah, I mean, it's got to be almost beautiful to where you're watching this. It's like a choreographed play in some respects, where you guys all know what everyone's going to do. You guys are trained. You're just so sharp, and to be with guys, especially guys that to kill or die for you, will give up their life in a second. It's almost like, I don't know, man. It's almost like a beauty to it, to be honest with you.
Yeah, there was at the end of that deployment, it was my mom passed away while I was on that deployment, and it was like 3 weeks left to go on that deployment. We were starting to pack up. We were preparing to leave. We started working. The guys that were going to replace us were starting to come in, and then when I was in the States at my mom's funeral, it was a day later. I get a phone call, and unfortunately, is one of our sister company, our sister team that was in the next valley over. They hit an IED that killed 3 of their guys. And it was in the Mandakandal Pass is the name of it, and those guys. I don't know. That was it was horrible. But the level of I don't know, the level of stress or the hypervigilance and stuff. They called me up, they tell me about it, and I'm just like, oh, okay. I'll be home, for their memorial, and I'll help take care of all that and do all that stuff. Went home back because I was up in Massachusetts for my mom's funeral, so I went back down to Fort Bragg, helped receive those guys, take care of the memorial, and then during that day, on that Memorial Day, for them, we get informed, another guy from my team specifically, they were like, those guys were rotating out, and they weren't even, I guess, really, they potentially didn't even have to go. They did the 82nd Airborne guys, they were doing a patrol, they got ambushed, and some of my guys from my team went on that quick reaction force.
Okay.
And one of my guys got shot, and it was as they were clearing through this wadi, there was a guy up in a tree that he didn't see, and he got shot and killed him. And then another friend of mine, Dave, chased him down and then took care of that situation. And I think that's where Dave was awarded a Silver Star for that day also.
Okay.
Yeah, Dave is another incredible person. He was a medic. He was a mortar guy. And there's a good story I tell you about him being a mortar guy with me in 2007. But I'll wait for that one. Just remind me.
All right.
Yeah, but
sounds good.
But so that was that was an unfortunate part of Afghanistan. Even though I'm very proud of what we did there. I'm very proud of my deployment, and then in some aspects, it's really good memories of working with those people. And that, but at the same time, it's very unfortunate too. Because people that we loved and we lost them. So. And I had to go to my friend's house and talk to his mom and dad and tell them what happened. And for me, that was, that was probably one of the most difficult things I've ever done in my life. Mentally, physically, it was just, and then, going through that and taking care of the family, and at that point, I tried to, just focus on taking care of the family and helping them and being there for them if they need it. Even today, if they called me up, I'd just drop everything for them and whatever they need, I'd help them out with.
That's beautiful.
Yeah.
So how are you processing this as you're going through and suffering these losses? Are you processing it?
No.
Just kind of burying it and going on.
Yeah, you just bury it, and that was, and so we go through all that, and then I get back to Fort Bragg, and then 3 weeks later I'm deploying to South America again.
Wow.
Yeah, and then I'm doing a 6-month tour in South America, and working in the embassy, doing some embassy security and different operations with different agencies, and so there wasn't no time to process it, or and nobody did it. Nobody had those conversations really.
Yeah.
We were supposed to just continue on doing our job, and we're supposed to be okay, whatever that is. And later, really thinking about it, and after retirement and processing it, realizing the stress level that I was on and where I was at just didn't translate to civilian life.
Right.
Being hypervigilant, I guess irritable, quick to snap. In Afghanistan, if you see red and you're mad and whatever, it doesn't matter, because that's going to help you get done whatever you need to get done.
Yeah.
But when you're downtown at the bar and somebody's like hassling you and you see red, and then suddenly you're in a fight, or you're hitting somebody with a chair or something like that. That's not. That's not.
No, not conducive to having a successful civilian life, so to speak.
Yeah, exactly. And and then so then from a 6-month deployment to South America, and then I come back, I stay for 2 weeks, and then boom, I'm back in Afghanistan again.
Wow.
Well, exactly like what you're saying. Some Special Forces group was, because there was nobody to backfill us in South America. So we were still handling all our normal deployments to South America and Afghanistan. So people were doing like back-to-back deployments, and they were doing them for, I don't know, until Afghanistan ended. I know that I had some friends that were still working there. They go to Afghanistan, they come home, boom, and they're going to South America for 3, 4, 5, 6 months, and just back-to-back deployments. I think in 2008, when I decided to go to SWIC, the training school, I had 32 out of 36 months deployed.
Holy cow, that's amazing.
Yeah. And so at that point, at the end of that, my marriage was done after that. Yep. My kids, I spent so much time away from my kids. They were like kind of just, I didn't I didn't quite have that connection with them, that maybe a father shouldn't have either, kind of putting them in the same situation. Well, not in the same, putting them in a situation where they're not feeling connected to me as much as they should. And I've talked to my daughter about it, and she mentions that sometimes, and
of course. How could she not? They're going to feel that loss, so to speak.
Yeah.
And I can't imagine. First of all, I can't imagine they're just putting you guys from just deployment to deployment to deployment. I mean, you're human beings. You have lives in addition to the military. Not that they care, but you really think the mental health of your troops is going to be helped by not letting them decompress and kind of live their life as well?
Yeah. I think about that sometimes. I don't know if you want them to decompress.
True. Yeah. In that respect, I guess you want to keep these warriors sharp, and they're looking at us as pieces of meat. They're not looking at us as this, whole human being, so to speak.
Yeah. I mean, I think if because I just went through it, and I didn't really. Well, you know what I did do though is like, I would say, having a 6-pack of beer, just like a bad day, and doing that. But even within my community, to drink beer, to drink whiskey or whatever, none of that was out of the ordinary. So, it's like, I feel like crap today, or not that I feel like crap. I feel that irritation, and you know what I mean by that?
Yeah.
That little
Absolutely.
sense of irritability that won't go away. It's like, 6-pack, or even a 12-pack will take care of that.
Yeah, it's a coping mechanism.
Yeah.
I mean, it's exactly what it is.
About partying, drinking, there was always some type of excuse, some type of event that you could, that you would use to justify it in some form or manner. And, that was kind of the life, deployment after deployment. And so that was like 2005 and 2006. I spent that time deployed in South America, and then went right back to Afghanistan in 2007, which that deployment was a lot crazier than my 2004 and 5. That one, we had approximately 20 different contacts where we had, we were firing our guns back and forth with people.
Yeah.
In some form or manner, as far as some of them, there was one specific, 10 to 15 meters away from a 100-man ambush line, and we're like shooting back and forth. And on that one specifically, two gentlemen on my team received silver stars for their actions on that ambush site. And then, some of them might be 1,000 meters away, where we're using the heavy guns or indirect fire. But we had like 20 different contacts on that one.
And how long is that deployment?
That was a 9-month deployment.
Okay.
Yeah, and so we were in a place called De Rawood, was the name of the camp we were at.
Okay.
And we were the Dutch. The Dutch had a camp there also, and I think the Dutch didn't necessarily have a positive outlook on the SF guys. They thought we were kind of barbaric and ruthless and the bearded ones,
Yeah.
And so we're like, so they didn't necessarily want us operating in that village area with them. And so when they said that, we were like, okay, well, what are we going to do? So we looked at the operational area for our battalion and our company, and what they needed was someone to run on northern Kandahar area and just kind of interdict supplies and troop passing back and forth from Pakistan to the Helmand province. And so we spent, probably maybe 4 months doing that, maybe 3 to 4 months doing that. And
Okay.
within that time period, that's where we had most of our contacts. And all the way from, I can't remember the name of it. Chinar too was one of the villages that was like kind of impossible to get to. We tried getting there, but like that was when we went down there. We got close, and then we stopped, and we had conversations, and then we left, and then we went back the next day, and then boom, there's a contact, and we spent 10 hours fighting these people.
Wow. And
this goes back to my friend Dave about the mortar guy.
Yeah.
So Dave was a mortar guy prior to becoming a medic, and he dropped off when we were going down into the valley. He stopped pulled up his mortar position, and I see like this squad out ahead of me, and they're about 1,500 yards out in front of me. And I'm talking to the driver, and he's like, "What are you going to do? What are you going to do?" I was like, "Well, let's just keep going towards them as far as we can because of the environment and trying to drive out there." And we had the other half of the team. They were bounding to the left side of us, and we were going to be pulling security on the south side of the objective area where we wanted to go. And so Dave is like, "Hey, you see those guys out there, right?" And I'm like, "Yeah, we see them. Just let us get a little bit closer because I wanted to get within range with the 50 cal before he started shooting off the mortars." And I finally told Dave, I was like, "Yeah, go ahead, drop that round, Dave." And he dropped that round on his first round he was probably almost 2,500 meters away. Wow. Landed dead center on that squad. And
about a mile and a half, right?
Yeah, 25. It was 1,600 meters is a mile. Yeah, so a mile and a quarter. But I mean, he's running the 81 millimeter mortar, and he dropped that round right dead center. I mean, he was like a genius on his math and his calculations and how to run that mortar. And when he did that, it was like watching TV. I was just like, "Oh my God!" He just boom right in the center of him. It was incredible. It was a great day.
Bullseye, Dave. That's awesome.
Yeah, and so in the type of environment that so went from South America doing embassy work, working with different agencies, go to Afghanistan. Now I'm in this type of environment where we're in combat and actually having contact, once or twice a week in this area. And like this day here specifically, we're taking the Afghanis that are getting shot and killed. We're just loading them up on the hoods of our vehicles. We're backing them out of there, getting them evac'd. There was, and this is just kind of normal life, And
right.
we're taking like team pictures of ourselves with our buddies, and then but there's like 3 dudes laying on the hood of our truck, There was one that we got ambushed in this valley, and it was kind of it was definitely a non-standard type of ambush because they did like a T ambush where their ambush line, and then they sent men ahead of them in this wadi on like the other side of the road. So that way, when they started conducting their ambush, when everybody dumped out of their vehicles and got up in that wadi, they were sitting in the wadi to shoot back down at them. But because of the different elevations of the ground, they had cover where they were at, and they could still shoot at the logistics line that we had coming in that they ambushed. But our team, the team guys, we were on this other part of in that valley, and when that kicked off, we just drove around and we came up towards them, and and then we like made contact with them, and boom, we went straight up against them, and we got as close as at one point in time we were as close as 15, 20 yards from that ambush line.
Wow.
And our vehicles, we were taking shots like from the sides. Not really from the front because they were doing like their coordinated fire, so they were like shooting diagonal, So
okay.
we're the sides of our vehicles are getting shot up, and we didn't have the full armor Humvees. We just had the up armored Humvees, and so there were gaps in them. We had a couple rounds just like go through our dashboard and cross us and stuff, and and then at one point in time, we had 2 of our guys have to dismount out of the vehicle, go up to the ambush line because we had our Afghanis stuck like right in front of the ambush line.
Okay.
And those 2 guys were awarded silver stars for their actions on that site during that day. And once they went in, pulled them out of there, saved them from the ambush line, we were able to back up off the line. At that point, we were able to call in close air support and then eliminate the rest of that company-size element of Taliban. So that was like the kind of stuff that we were doing. And then the next morning, we get resupplied tires, doors, windows, food, water, and then we're doing medevac for some of the guys that got injured. And they were all Afghanis that get injured. None of us did. And
Okay.
so this is kind of the atmosphere we're in. This guy comes up, he's like, "Hey, it's like, can I get on that aircraft and go to Kandahar and go home for a couple weeks?" And we're like, "Why? What's wrong with you?" He's like, "Oh, well, I got shot last night." And we're like, "What are you talking about? You got shot last night?" And he's like, "Yeah, right here." He's like, "My throat is really sore, but he got shot in the neck right here, and it went in his neck and then come out the other side. He had a pinhole here and a pinhole here.
Holy
and he had a sore throat." Yeah. And
this is the way he tells you. He's not like screaming or anything like that. Just
yeah, he's
hey,
just
you
like,
guys mind if I roll in this plane? Just got shot in the throat.
yeah, got shot in the throat, and I want to go home and chill out for a while. We're just like, oh, it's like, all right, man, we'll send you home.
Yeah, you're in that one, brother.
Yeah.
So were these guys like pretty hardcore themselves?
Oh yeah,
Pretty tough dudes?
Yeah, oh yeah. The Afghanis that work with us, like most of them, most of the teams would run, not always, and not for all of them, but to like especially the leadership. Sometimes you just fall into the leadership, but a lot of them have been there since 2001 in the initial start of the whole fight, and a lot of them have been there for fighting for years. I mean, we're going in there for 9 months, but they're living it,
Yeah.
for 5, 6, 10 years,
Yeah.
And so, those guys, I mean, that's their life. So, I mean, that's even, it's kind of weird. It's kind of, I say weird in the manner that, like, their life, like we talk, that was our combat time. And that was like, for some people, a horrific time, but those people live that their whole life.
It's almost like being in a hood, like East LA, and you're talking to hardened gangsters, and that's their life, man. They're walking around, shootings every day, like it's their life,
Yeah. Yeah,
nothing different about
hard
it.
to understand.
It is.
But there's something that got shot in the neck. It could have been an Enfield 303 or it could have been an AK-47, one or the other.
Holy shit.
We ended up finding out the next day after, we got rid of that company size element. We got rid of them all. And we were checking out the site. And there was 10 positions in front of my vehicle and in the vehicle next to me. There were 10 positions there. And at each position was 100 cases of 303 rounds. So the guys in front of us were using Lee Enfields. Are you familiar with that weapon?
No.
It's the British rifle from World War I and II.
Really?
And you used to be able to buy them at like Ross for like $40. At the local department stores. But it's all their, the World War I and II surplus rifles but they got them from the British back in the late 18 and early 1900s when the British were there fighting. And then they get them from Pakistan and stuff like that too. But but a 303 round is similar to a 30-06.
Damn.
Yeah. But there was 100 rounds at each fight position in front of us, and there was 10 fight positions with that gun that they were using, and so that was interesting to realize that they're still using bolt action rifles, and well, although they weren't successful, but they could have been.
Yeah.
Who knows how it could have happened if it did something different, but and that was
amazing.
so that was So, that 2007 rotation, after we were in northern Kandahar, and the Dutch were at our camp in Debre Wood, they were working that whole entire village. Well, they started taking casualties, and when that started happening, they were like, they talked.
And this is special forces, not conventional army for the Dutch.
No, this is a conventional army.
Oh, conventional, okay.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure. Don't quote me on that, but
okay.
But I think they were conventional, probably like a conventional infantry company or something like that. And then they've got all the contingents with them, intel and all that and all the support mechanisms they had there too. It was a pretty big camp.
Okay.
But they started taking casualties, and so as soon as that started happening, then they started talking to our company again. They're like, "Hey, maybe the SF guys should come back." So then we went back to our camp, and then the same thing kicked off there. We just started going into the village, and then we're getting in firefights, and the last mission I ever did on a ODA was a movement to contact in Debre Wood village, and myself and Luis, and then we had a couple of guys from 2-4, and then we had some Afghanis with us, and but basically went out into the middle of the village and doing a small unit patrol, and then specifically look for contact, and we did, and we got contact, and then same thing, the end result of that wasn't good for them. So we had another part of our team and part of our company element. They were up on pulling Overwatch for us, and they had mortars and all that stuff with them too. So anything and everything we did was very well coordinated and
right.
tactical. I mean,
okay.
We're not. We're not going to waste our time like that.
Yeah, exactly.
We're not going to
train for a reason.
Effective.
Yeah. So this deployment comes to an end, and what's going on at this point, career-wise?
Oh yeah. So career-wise, so that was my last mission I did on the ODA, and then I went back, and then I went back to Fort Bragg, and then I volunteered myself to go to the Special Warfare Training Center. And there I worked at Robin Sage, and then I worked at SEER School doing company operations. At that point, I started becoming a staff officer, and at the company level. And so I was running operations for the SEER School, and that's very interesting. Have you ever read the book 5 Years to Freedom?
No.
No, it's an interesting book if you get an opportunity to do it. It's a book about Nick Rowe and his 5 years of imprisonment in Vietnam.
Okay.
And basically what they did is they took that SEER School, they took that book, and they applied that book to the school to put you in all those different situations that he was in, so you can just learn to better understand and maybe hopefully survive if you're a prisoner of war. And I know some of that has changed over the last 10 years because they've added some hostage detention type stuff and to better train the guys.
How realistic do you guys get in SEER in terms of torture and what they do to the guys? Because I know they obviously make it as realistic as possible, but like how far does it go?
It doesn't really go. They can slap you across the face. I'll go that far. But there's different situations they put you in, and that's another area of one, you're being deprived of food, and during the entire course, the 30-day of the course, you're not eating like full meals entirely. So throughout that whole 30 days, like that portion of training is like your last 5 days being in a simulated prison camp, but in general. But before that, you're out in the field and you're evading. So when you're in evasion, you're not eating either, except for what you can find. So you're living off the land, doing that. And then before that, you're doing some survival training where you may be getting a chicken, but you're splitting that between your whole team. So by the time you get in the camp, then you're getting no food and you're not sleeping. So you're sleep deprivation, food deprivation, and then you've got these people, the stress level from them yelling at you, making you run around, and physically you can't do it. And so just physically and mentally, you're so wore out. So
yeah.
If you are at full capacity, what's going on there really may not seem that big of a deal.
Right.
Although it would still be challenging, but it's not. But when you're in that depleted condition, everything gets
magnified,
exacerbated, and it just gets
Yeah, I can imagine.
Yeah, but they can't. They're not able to just beat the shit out of someone.
Right. Yeah. I figured that. Well, I guess you don't have to. You deprive the guys of all the other things, and it just compounding effects, and you destroy it anyway.
Oh yeah, and when they're doing their interviews and stuff like that, they've got people that are trained specifically for that, and to manipulate you, to get you emotional, and wear you down in that form and manner. So it's just, the training for the guys, it's a great training opportunity. Anybody that can ever get an opportunity to go there, they should. I know that and they've got one school at like Fort Rucker for pilots, and then they've got the one at Fort Bragg for SF guys, and I think the Air Force has theirs somewhere. I can't remember where their school is, but
Okay.
each
What's theirs, a Motel 6 instead of a Ritz-Carlton, the Air Force?
yeah, and then the Navy. The Navy, I'm sure they've got their own somewhere too. I'm not really familiar with where they do theirs, but no, it is great training. And then so I did that, and then I did that for until 2012, and then I went to school for a year to finish my degree. I'm a 42-year-old sitting at the Campbell University with some 18, 19, 20-year-old looking weird and funny. But it was really some of it was I guess in some of it I could see some of the issues that we have today, which a lot of people talk about how universities are a waste of money and how they're really just indoctrinating people there.
Right.
And I went through my American history class, and we got to the portion where we were going to talk about the first president of the United States of America, and he spent 5 minutes on it and accused him of cheating on his wife and being a slave owner, and went on. I'm just like, holy smokes, George Washington, you spend 5 minutes on him, and then you badmouth him, and then drive on.
It's unbelievable.
Yeah,
I mean, look at the context of when he lived and what was going on at that time. You can't just blankly say he did this, and dismiss him. Mm-hmm. Nor should you. It's history.
Nor should you.
Don't rewrite it.
I mean, he was only the first president of the greatest nation
Yeah.
ever.
It's unbelievable.
Maybe 10 minutes.
Yeah, exactly.
There's that one story I love about him, though. He was a British soldier. I think he was a lieutenant at the time, and he was fighting in Canada against the French and the Indians at the time. And he charged the line 3 times, and 3 times his horse was shot from under him. Each time he lost his horse, he'd go back, get another one, and go back and charge. And this in the book that I was reading, they talked about the soldiers around him looking at him standing by the fire later at night, and how they could see the light coming through all his bullet-ridden jacket.
Wow.
Yeah, and that's like that scenario would be that's like, oh, that guy today, oh yeah, that guy he needs to get a Silver Star, or maybe something better, something great.
Exactly. Yeah. Give him the Medal of Honor.
And even so, just to talk about a guy for 5 minutes in the university, and it's like that's what you talked about, and you don't mention anything else about the great things that guy did, so whatever. But that's the atmosphere in the universities, even back in 2012, and I could see it there. Or I was doing my Eastern European studies, and the teacher was talking about like Russian, but like in a manner that it was like great and that it was good, and it even got down to a point one day where one of the students was talking about, so if everybody just did what Stalin was saying, then everything would have been okay. And she's like, yes. And then she's like, oh, okay. I'm just kind of like,
wow.
Just the mentality on that.
Yeah.
It was 75% of the farmland was owned by the government, but it only could supply 25% of the food. 25% of the land, 1 acre lots, was owned privately by the individuals, but because it was theirs and it was their private property, they were able to produce 75% of the food that the country needed. Yeah, so it's kind of the whole thing about property rights, and Stalin, he knew that the government owned, they weren't producing, they couldn't get them to produce, so he allowed a certain amount of private property usage, but he did obligate them to run farms, and they were able to keep some and then supply it and sell it to people that needed it within the community, and they were actually successful with that. So there's like the kind of the insight on that, the communists using private property and capitalism to actually survive.
Exactly.
But keeping it secret.
It's amazing.
but so that was, and we had like I remember there was one guy from, he was actually from East Germany, and he actually escaped out of East Germany, and somehow he made it through to the States, and then made it through SF qualification and all that. But then he was one of our share instructors. So And like everybody has to fake their accent when they're in the prison, but this guy got to use his real accent. It was kind of creepy though, because you're like, oh my God, this guy isn't faking.
Yeah, exactly. That's great.
And,
All right, so let's kind of get to mindset. You know, this is a podcast kind of geared to guys and girls going through it. So, kind of post career, how are you finding yourself mental health wise? You finding yourself getting a little depressed. You finding anger. Like, what's going on with you personally?
Well, two things, I think, physically and mentally. Physically, in 2015, I had a full right knee replacement. So my right knee, I was at a point where I had a permanent limp, and I couldn't walk. And it was starting to affect my back, and then the arthritis was just it devastated my right knee. But that was in 2004. I got ambushed, and I did a semi-dislocation on my knee, and it just tore up the cartilage, and it took 10 years, but it finally just gave out on me. So I got that done.
Okay.
So struggling, physically struggling with those things, and it's really kind of almost like a 9-year period from the time I retired until I went to my Ibogaine event, and where I was just being affected by all these little things that just kept on nagging me. Nothing was going away. My right knee, I had that surgery done, best thing I ever did in my life. If you are getting, or to a point where you have like a permanent limp, just do the surgery, get it done. I know there's other stem cells, all this other stuff, but if you're at a point where I was at, where it was just like bone on bone, and they're giving you that option, get it done. I've done 18-mile hiking, marches or hikes with my right knee, with the fake knee, and it works great. I work normal. So that aspect. The other aspect of retiring, because I took some time off initially, and you trying to occupy 40 to 60 hours a week on your own dime, I don't know. I still can't do it.
You need a purpose.
Yeah, you have to have a purpose. So, and finding that purpose isn't that easy. And so what I started doing was I started contracting. So I'm at home, and when I'm at home, I don't feel normal. I don't feel like I feel guilty because I'm sitting around, or I'm feeling guilty because I didn't get anything really done productive that day. But I don't really have anything productive to do because I'm not working. So in between my contracts, I'm at home feeling kind of, I'm not going to say depressed, but I don't even really know how to put it, because, what is normal to somebody? I just didn't feel normal. But if I went on a contract.
That's how I was too.
Then I'm around all the people that I've been working with for the last 25 years, then I feel normal. And so that's kind of one of the things I started battling for the first couple of years. I was like, I get to a job and I'm doing a contract and I'm around people, and then I'm like, now I feel normal working with you. I did a lot of training with MARSOC, doing their unconventional warfare training exercise at the end of their training school there. I was doing some intel stuff up in D.C. and then some other role-playing around the country. And sometimes, depending on where the training event, I'd go to wherever that was. But same thing. It's like, that now I'm with all my buddies, or I'm with a bunch of people that I've worked with for the last 20, 25 years. And, the same thing. One of the common themes throughout my career, and then kind of in general throughout my entire life, all the way from when I started drinking in junior high, the keg parties on Friday, Saturday nights, then we're going out for wings and we're going out for beers and, whiskey. One of the things I remember them talking, whiskey Wednesdays, but all this is normal and it's all accepted. And I can't say it never affected my career because I didn't do my career without it, But I mean, my career wasn't unsuccessful. It was successful. I mean, I worked hard, and when I was younger, drinking until 2, 3, 4 in the morning, and then showing up to the formation and going run 10 miles.
Yeah.
You
Yeah,
know?
you could do it. Exactly. And everyone else was doing it. It's a culture.
Yeah, and most people were doing it, and so whatever. That part of it was just, and then coming home. But then, then I come home. Well, then I'll just, I'll buy a 12-pack, and so then it starts being a part of my retired life. Now I'm drinking, beer whenever, and or whiskey. So, and then, I got into actually, making my own moonshine and stuff like that, so then I'm like making some like really, really strong stuff. And then, so I'm just having shots of that and but I never really thought twice about it. So that's the kind of life I was leading, contracting, coming home, chilling out, drinking. And then, physically, vertigo, I was starting to get like these vertigo attacks really bad, and I've been kind of suffering with those for like maybe 5 years, 6 years maybe.
Okay.
And maybe longer than that, but say 5, 6 years. But shoulder issues. But it's like none of this stuff. It's like they do a MRI on my shoulder. Oh yeah, it looks bad, and we might be able to do surgery. But then they want to give you anti-inflammatories or take these painkillers. I had this one issue with my hip, and it is my psoas muscle. It's the one that goes from the bottom of your back to the front of your femur.
Yeah.
For some reason, it spasms and cramps up on me. But I mean, it's like painful. I was in the airport in Atlanta going to Ecuador for a couple months, and I had to I went to the desk like, hey, I got to go to the emergency room. I can't continue on with this flight.
Wow.
And they put me on painkillers, muscle relaxers, and Valium. And they were like, just take all this stuff and then go do whatever, And so I was like taking Valium for like 2 months, and just to sleep because the pain was so bad at night. I couldn't sleep, so I'd take Valium to sleep at night. Yep. The muscle relaxers to try to get that thing to release. And it wasn't until, even when I went to physical therapy for it, they were just trying to teach me how to kind of get past it.
Yeah.
And then finally I found this one physical therapist. Well, no, it wasn't even a physical therapist. I found a video on YouTube on how to get that muscle to release.
Okay.
And if you got to do like the specific exercise, and you do it in a way, and you can actually get that muscle to release. And it wasn't until, it wasn't even the doctor or the physical therapist. I'm just searching for answers.
A YouTube video gives you
anywhere, and I found a YouTube video that talked about, getting that muscle to relax. And it was the whole concept of like, if your bicep gets a cramp in it, if you use your tricep, it will get that bicep to relax. And the same concept with that psoas. So I was doing these other different exercises with my hamstring that would actually get that muscle to release. And it wasn't until I figured that out that I could get rid of all those drugs. And then in my mind, I'm just thinking like, I mean, these are supposed to be professional people who are supposed to be, what I thought was, healthcare. In reality, they couldn't tell me what was wrong with me. They couldn't tell me, and nobody still to this day could tell me why that's happening, other than, drink some pickle juice. And it's like, I've done all that stuff,
Yeah.
I make sure my magnesium and all my minerals are up and all that stuff. And that's actually when I started researching that aspect of it too, to make sure all my minerals were correct. But then the vertigo was the one that was really, really affected me. I mean, there was one day it wasn't my first event, but it was like my worst event that I've ever had. I didn't know what it was, and I had my wife bring me to the emergency room. So I went to the emergency room with this, and I thought maybe I was having a heart attack or something. And finally, they got some CT scans, and they did all this stuff. And I'm sitting in front of the, I think a neurologist. And he's sitting there, and he's saying, your brain looks like a beat-up old 84-year-old man. Damn. I'm like, okay, and I'm just thinking about it. I'm like, yeah, I mean, I between wrestling, football, being on airborne status for 21 years, how many times I've hit my head on the ground doing that, and then having conversations with people from work. One friend of mine was telling me, and I don't have the journals and all that stuff that back this stuff up, but they were talking about breachers specifically. And all the breaching that we did in Safawik and then in Afghanistan and then even using like the Carl Gustav. When you use a Carl Gustav, which is a rocket propelled type thing, it's suggested to only use it so many times within a certain time period because of the concussion that you can feel in your brain from it.
Right.
And so with that, I'm like thinking, wait a second. So I look like my brain looks like it's 84 years old, and it looks beat up. And he's like showing me these pictures, and they've got all these black spots all over it, and they're trying to figure out maybe if that's what's causing my vertigo, or if there's like something growing in my brain. But fortunately, there's nothing, no tumors, none of that, just a lot of scar tissue. But, so, and then with the vertigo, and then with the tinnitus, migraine headaches, same thing from them. They're just giving me a bunch of pills. And I think this is a real common story. Painkillers, tryptophan, I think was one of the ones that they wanted for my migraine headaches.
Okay.
I can't remember. When I brought them home, I put them up on top of my thing, and I said I'm not touching them. And then eventually I ended up just getting rid of everything. And so going through this, you remember that, what was it, that one football player from the New England Patriots? The one that was murdering everybody?
Oh, Hernandez. Yeah.
But, they talk about him going through his life and playing football and having brain injuries. And then, so then they're looking at all this TBI within the NFL and then how people are committing suicide. And so, I mean, to me, I'm thinking like, well, one, suicide's not an answer. That's not going to be me. And I'm not going to let that happen. I'm going to try to find something to like get rid of my vertigo. And tinnitus is incurable. So, I'll just live with that. My migraines, so I got to search and figure that one out. And I've gotten rid of my migraines generally, and kind of a combination of things I'll say, I think Ibogaine Retreat helped me out quite a bit. I think, creating a stretch and exercise and program for myself, and that one worked out quite a bit. I quit seeing the chiropractor because chiropractors were telling me for I don't know, 10, 15 years, oh, we'll fix you and we'll get this right. But it's like 10, 15 years later, I still got my headaches, and
right.
What they were doing. But the massage therapy, the stretching, and I guess, and the Ibogaine, that may not necessarily been, however that is, because I didn't have my brain scan done before and after. But generally I feel healthy. In my migraines, I went from like having them every day to, maybe once a month. And then like, I'm thinking about it now. The last time I've had, it's been almost 2 months now for me.
Nice.
So it goes in spurts though, and like if I get a little bit lazy, I'm not doing my stretching exercise, I might feel kind of weird about it, and then I get back to it, so it doesn't come back.
So what kind of spurred you to do Ibogaine?
Well, with that neurologist talking about my brain being beat up, and then the PTSD, when I talk about my PTSD, what is that? Because it's different for everybody. For me, it was my highs and lows emotionally were sometimes uncontrollable. Like I could be super happy one day and then like super like not depressed but angry. Or I know you probably, this will describe exactly. Yeah, I think you'll understand this. You ever seen that one video on the internet, that guy, the garbage guy?
He just does it once and then just goes to town with the can?
Yeah, well, then he grabs the mailbox.
Yep.
And he rips it, and then, Well, I mean, that's how. Imagine feeling like that though for like 24/7,
Yeah,
And then the only thing then I'm thinking like, well, freaking a 12-pack will fix that, So then I drink a 12-pack, Okay.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know. Does a 12-pack sound like a lot? I grew up since I was like 14 years old drinking beer, so a 12-pack to me is not a big deal,
Yeah.
But then but that 12-pack would make me feel good, and then I'd get rid of that. But then I'd wake up the next day and it would be right back, So I was getting in that cycle.
Yeah.
And so I was in South Carolina working a MARSOC event, and we were working their final training exercise, and I just happened to be talking about ayahuasca, and because my tattoo artist from Ecuador, I was talking to him about it and just brought it up in conversation, and then he brought it up in conversation, and come to find out he was doing ayahuasca for like 10 years, but he never shared it completely with me. But when I came home from that trip, then I was talking to my buddy, as a friend of mine, Chris. I was like, hey, they've got this whole ayahuasca thing, and we just need to investigate it, and then we need to just go on a trip, and to Ecuador or wherever, and give this a try, and to see, because they say, I mean, in some forms, it's kind of like the cure-all, depression, beer drinking, or alcoholism. It
any
can kind of
addiction.
change your perspective. At this point, I'm describing what I was thinking and hearing at that point in time, because I wasn't fully aware of or understanding of this whole process.
Right.
And so there was a guy there from MARSOC, and he was he's like, ayahuasca. He's like, hey, I got something for you. He's like, you need to hear about this one. And he talked about the ibogaine. And the same thing, he didn't give us the entire story, but he's like, you go to this place, and this ibogaine thing is a treatment for TBI, PTSD, and it can give you a different perspective on life. And the perspective I was looking for was a perspective of being a good grandfather or good father, a better husband. Because that work I did for 25 years, almost really 30 years, that work didn't translate to being a good family member.
Right.
It didn't translate to being a good grandfather. It didn't translate operating off of my ego for 30 years. That translated to be kind of a bully within the family, or be hard within the family, or being disconnected from the family, but being present at the same time.
Yeah.
It's like, I'd have a cookout and everything, but I'm drinking a 6-pack and I'm not connecting with my family like the way I should.
Yep.
I think, and I did that for a lot of years. I mean, you think about it. I mean, somebody's birthday, your kid's birthday party, there's always beer, there's always something like that, a cookout, there's, the stereotypical guy cooking on the grill, and he's got his beer,
Yeah, if you want to, you can make anything a holiday, where you're going to town. Absolutely. Any excuse.
Yeah. And I mean, so with that was kind of like, I was like, there's got to be something more within life, because I don't want to go through my life just kind of blindly going through this. I don't want to be known as that. I don't want to be known as that SF guy. I don't want to be. That was the only thing I did in my life.
Yes.
And really, there was a kind of a. I remember when I was getting divorced with my first wife, and she was having a conversation about like, oh well, I'm known as like, Roy's husband or whatever, and at the time, and I can still remember that moment in that conversation. I was like, what do you mean by that? I was like, why would you be associating yourself as that? I was like, why don't you associate yourself with being Royce's mom or Ronnie's, mom, or you know what I mean, or because she was a nurse. Or why don't you identify as being a nurse, whatever. Why are you allowing people to identify you in that manner? And I was looking at that too as like, I just don't want to be this person just known as or continue living that life of, oh, I'm an SF guy, and then I got to do all this extra stuff to do it. I mean, I definitely like helping people out, and I definitely want to continue being part of that community, but that's not all I want to be in.
Yeah.
So, and I did have some experience with psychedelics as a young kid. When I was 15 years old, not a lot, but you know, when you're at that age, you're getting in trouble, you're goofing off, you're doing stuff that you're not supposed to be doing. But I had an incident where I took some, and I got separated from my group of people I was with, and I ended up being by myself, and I was walking the town by myself. And I remember exactly where this was on. It was on Route 3 in Kingston, Massachusetts. I was on the bridge, and I was walking towards Plymouth. And I'm 15 years old, and this is like, I don't know, maybe 10, 11, 12 o'clock at night on like a Thursday. You know, because at the time I just did whatever I wanted anyways, you know. And for whatever reason, I had this like sense of freedom that sparked that whole concept of me going to Florida and just not staying in one spot. And in my mind, that encouraged me to pursue the Army. Once I went in the Army, it encouraged me to go in the SF, deploy, learn Spanish, live and work in South America. I mean, so to think about it, really, one of my most I guess influential events in my life was that one moment I had of freedom or sense of freedom, but it was from a psychedelic. Mm-hmm. So I wasn't afraid of doing it. And when he talked about doing this ibogaine thing, in my mind I was like, well, I'll go do it and we'll see what happens. And so part of the program though was that you can't drink 2 weeks before, and then you have to not drink for 6 months afterwards. And in my mind, I was just thinking like, hey, I can do that. That's easy. Cause it sounds easy, but
yeah, exactly.
But
in practice.
But I've done it on deployments where I'd go 2, 3, 4 months without drinking to Afghanistan, and but whatever. So I go there, and one of the guys that goes there with me, and they're all within a group of I think there's 5 of us, but we're all from the SF community, combat veterans. And one of the guys that was in my room, my roommate was from 7 Special Forces Group also, and he was a wounded warrior, and so he really had a rough time. And I think he had some more insight on that event than I did. And the first thing he asked me, he's like, so why are you going to this? Because you're drinking too much, you're not alcoholic? And that's just like, I was just taken back from it. I was like, well, that wasn't really my initial thought process on this, but okay, yeah, I do drink, and I probably drink too much. And, but it was one of those things where he mentioned that to me. And then during the process while we're there, because, we did the sweat lodge, we did some interviews, and we did some kind of group conversations. And while we were having those conversations, I was, thinking about it, and it was like one of those come to Jesus moments where you're like, yeah, a lot of my problems may not necessarily, not that it's my problem. It's like the problems I am having, I'm using alcohol to cover them. Mm-hmm. But the alcohol wasn't allowing me to be the best person I could actually be to get rid of those problems.
Right.
And to be fully present. And I realized while I was there that, drinking alcohol was just like, you're not present at all. It's
not your authentic self.
Yeah, you're not connected. You're not present for your family. The issues that it creates when you're having conversations with people and or trying to live a life with people, and you're not attending to the situations that need attention and being sober, and saying, okay, let's take care of this. Let's identify this problem. Let's fix it. And if you're drinking and then you're trying to do that, really you just make the whole thing worse. Because I'd have a fight with my wife or something like that, and then it's like, oh, you're just drunk, and it's like, no, I'm not drunk. I'm trying to express myself because I have a hard time doing it when I'm not drinking. So then everything's being chalked up as like, you're just drinking.
Yeah.
So you're getting into like these, which in some circles it might be normal and it might be kind of everyday thing where people are getting in these different fights and conversations, but because alcohol's there, it never ends up the way it's supposed to be.
Yeah, exactly.
But so doing the ibogaine at that time, the visions I had, and through that whole event, I just started realizing that, and start seeing and identifying where alcohol was actually not good for me in my life. And really it kind of made me, it made it gross to me.
Oh, really?
Yeah. And so I'll share one of my visions when, so I had one hallucination when I was in the ibogaine. From the ibogaine I took until the time I finally woke up and got up and went down to my room, it was 15 hours I lied on the mat, and I really don't remember very much of it, which is really common with people that do that. But yeah. I did get up one time to go to the bathroom, and while I was in the bathroom, I purged, and somebody walked out there and they were helping me, and but I was like. I felt like I had to purge. You understand that feeling? It's like, I was like, I got to purge, but I can't. And then I'm just sitting there. My stomach was already empty. There was no water in it. But I started to see a mason jar, the prettiest mason jar full of white liquor in it, moonshine. And it was full to the brim. And it was sitting there on the edge of the toilet. And it was like literally one of the most prettiest things you ever seen in your life. And but I could smell it also. I'd smell it, and then I'd purge. I'd smell it, and I purged, like I dry heaved probably 5 or 6 times. And then finally, the last time I smelled it, I finally purged up, all the, I call it a dust ball, because ibogaine, it's the ground up root, and it was literally like a little dust ball, and I finally purged that up, and immediately it felt better. But I remember that the smell and how I was purging. I went back, laid down, got up, and then later on, when I was going back home, I went through the San Diego airport and I walked through the duty-free area and I got in the litter section and it made me sick.
Nice.
Yeah. And
that's great.
Then coming home with that, and then looking at, what the life was, and how I was leading my life with alcohol, it was, it was really just like counterproductive. Yeah, absolutely. And then having that different perspective with the ibogaine, changing my perspective on alcohol. When that 6 months came up, I was like, yeah, no, I'm not going back to drinking. That's great. It's just a waste of. To me, it's a waste of time. It's just, I don't have 4, 5, 6 hours to like drinking beer and waste my time doing that, and then recovery time the next day sometimes.
Exactly.
But yeah, so. Going into that ibogaine retreat, that was, sitting down. I remember we were sitting by the fire in South Carolina, and that Marshak guy was talking about it, and I immediately, and that was probably the best thing, because it put me on a different road. Also, not just for ibogaine, because you do ibogaine on a Tuesday, Wednesday recovery, and then Thursday you do the DMT.
5-MeO DMT, yep.
Yeah, and that was like the complete opposite of the ibogaine, and it was like, that was just complete, pure joy, pure energy, and it gave me it was something that I was missing, and it was a conversation that I had prior to going into the ibogaine thing. I was like, understanding the concept between happiness and joy. Like, we can be happy and stuff like that and all that. But what I was realizing was that there wasn't like joy in me. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I didn't have joy for I didn't have really joy for people. And I did, but I couldn't find it.
Yep.
When I did the DMT, it was like my wife and my youngest daughter came to me and gave me a hug and like, hey, we're going to share a joy with you. And it was like, literally, it was like my gas tank of joy was on empty. And when they gave me that hug, it like filled up my gas tank of joy back. And it was
beautiful.
and it started with the ibogaine, and it was because, and I remember this specifically. I was standing in the living room, and I was having a conversation with some of the people there prior to waiting for my turn to go do the DMT, and somebody just kind of in conversation made a offhand joke, whatever it was, but it was like legitimately I laughed at it without being subconscious of it, or conscious of it. I just kind of laughed, and I was just like, holy smoke, I just really laughed at something that I haven't laughed. Like, I don't remember from that point in time, the realization that I have not laughed like that in who knows how long.
Wow.
I don't remember laughing like that, because it wasn't like a laugh like, you understand when you're marrying people and you're in a social, atmosphere, you kind of, you're making jokes and but it was like just something that came out of me, and it was like involuntary, but it was like a real joy laugh. And then doing that DMT just topped the whole thing off. And it was, and the realization of what I was missing out on by having that joy and then sharing that joy with the family. And it's just the perspective on life at that point was like, it was completely different. And when I left there, just, I left there joyful, not happy, joyful. There's a significant difference between, happiness is temporary. Joy is like, that's who you are. That's permanent.
Right.
And it just, I don't know. It's kind of, I can't say enough about it. It's a perspective you will never understand unless you experience it.
Yeah.
And
I always say, like, words dilute the magic. You can't explain it. Someone's got to experience it. And then, like, I know what you're talking about. Not necessarily through ibogaine. Ayahuasca was my psychedelic, but I know exactly what you're talking about.
Penn and Teller can't just show you this.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
Yeah, and I'm going to quote my buddy on this one. It's like, you can't unsee this when you do this stuff. You can't unsee it.
Nor do you want to.
Yeah, so, and I didn't realize how, I guess in a way, I didn't realize how bad I was, and you talk to different people and you talk to them now, and they're like, yeah, you seem different, or you seem happy, or you're just kind of like, I do, and it's just like, because you don't realize how bad you really were.
Yeah. You know what it is? Your steps happen in increments, small incremental steps. Yeah. And then when you finally look at it like you did, you're like, holy shit, that was a seismic shift, man. These small little things add up to this huge thing that you don't realize has occurred. Yeah,
no, exactly. And, and the people that are out there, when I got there on that Monday, I told my buddy there, and I was like, this is really weird because people are actually being nice to us. I was like, I just wasn't used to it. I was like, oh my God, it felt weird. I mean, it felt uncomfortable. It felt to the point I was uncomfortable because people were being nice to me and trying to help me. And I was just like, this doesn't even feel right,
Yeah.
And the food that they cooked for us was made with love, and it made specifically, it was healthy food, and the nurses that were there, everything. That place is absolutely, without a doubt, the model of professionalism, and anybody who has an opportunity to go should.
And what was the name of your facility?
It was what?
What was the name of your facility? Where was the facility you went to?
Ambio.
Okay.
Yeah.
So for everyone out there.
I went through it. The Ambio was the name of the company that runs that site down there. And then I went through Vet Solutions, and this is for veterans. And the Vet Solutions is specifically a special operations community that offers grants to special operations combat veterans. And so basically they paid for it. The only thing I paid for was my flight out there and 2 nights in a hotel in San Diego. They picked me up on Monday morning. They brought me back Friday afternoon. And and when I came home from that was, I told my wife, I was like, I told her I feel different. Something about, what happened there, I feel different. I got a different perspective on life. And it's not, but it's something that that I don't want to lose. So it takes a
Right.
lot of work to maintain that. It takes, the integration part of that.
Yeah. Yeah. It's
I'm
huge.
not the best.
Huge.
Yeah, I'm not the best guy on sitting down and listening to people, but but I like to self-study also. So
Yep.
doing my self-study, understanding myself, reading. There's all kinds of information on YouTube where you can listen and talk. Not necessarily talk to people, but you can listen to people talk about it. I would say one of the I know a lot of people may or may not like this guy, but Jordan Peterson is one of the people that I definitely listen to quite a bit.
Yeah, me too. I like him a lot.
Yeah, I mean,
He's polarizing, but he's a super intelligent guy. He's got mastery of this English language like no one I've ever heard speak.
yeah. I get to listen to him sometimes. Like if you listen to like one of his full podcasts, I can't remember who he did it with, but it's like a 2-hour podcast to listen and talk, and I had to listen to it 2 or 3 times. And then sometimes I'd rewind to listen to how he's explaining things and what he's trying to talk about. But if you can really sit down and understand what he's saying and what he's talking about, and he doesn't hold anything back. He's like, if you're being a dirtbag, he's going to tell you, hey, dude, you're being a dirtbag.
Yep. He's
Uh,
a genuine guy. Love him or hate him, but you have to respect the man. It tells you,
Yeah.
the truth from his perspective. You may not agree with it, but he's coming at you with his unadulterated truth, and that's all you can ask for from a man. But you've also journeyed with ayahuasca.
Yeah.
So how do you explain to people the difference between the two? Do you recommend someone journey with one over the other in certain circumstances? Like, what's your experience been like?
Well, so after I did the ibogaine, this is what I microdosed psilocybin
Okay.
for about 6 weeks. I did a cycle where I did it 3 times a day, just like the microdose, so you don't even feel it. And I did it 3 times a day for 4 days and then 3 days off.
Okay.
And then at home, I did a macrodose one time. This was in December of 23. And that microdose, I call it a hero dose. I did a hero dose.
Yep.
And
How
I
many
was at
grams
home
was
by
that?
myself, and I did that at night, and I went, I just lied down in bed, and basically, I didn't go to sleep, but I just lied in bed, and then finally come out of it, and then I went to sleep, and woke up the next day and went about my business. But
That's how I do it as well. How many grams do you take on the hero dose?
on a hero dose, 3.5 grams is what I'll use.
Okay.
Which isn't on the high end of a hero dose, but for whatever
No.
reason,
Perfect for you.
yeah, it's perfect for
Yeah.
me. And
I'll do 5.
wow, yeah. That's a good one.
Yeah, I think I process it pretty quickly. Mine tend to go about 2.5 hours, something like
Really?
that. I don't
Wow.
even think 3. And most people are like, 5 hours has
Yeah.
been their amount of
3.5
journey.
grams, I'll lie in bed and I'll journey for a solid 4 to 5 hours.
Wow.
And that's what happened that night. And so then I was like, okay, I'm done there with that. But so my story about ayahuasca, after my ibogaine retreat, my youngest daughter, she's adopted. She's my wife's daughter, and my wife is from Ecuador, and my daughter grew up in Ecuador. So my daughter was also very familiar with ayahuasca because within their culture down there, they use it, and it's part of their culture. So my daughter
Yep.
was familiar with it, but had never done it. She never had the opportunity. So she was talking to me about it, and this is why I was talking to my tattoo artist about ayahuasca, because my daughter was bringing it up. And so we were going to go to Ecuador to try to do it. But then I found out, after doing the ibogaine, I found out about Soul Quest. And so my youngest daughter, I was like, hey, let's do it here in the States.
Yep.
Go there. At least we know that if we need an ambulance or a hospital,
Yeah,
we can do
exactly.
that.
Yeah.
And her and my middle daughter, they both went together.
Okay.
And they both went for completely different reasons. But I think the results that came out of that were significantly different also. I think because of their intentions, they went in, were different, and so they came out different. And my middle daughter, she fought it, all 3
Oh, did she really?
ceremonies. Yeah, she really fought it. She didn't really want to participate in it, and she was kind of between my relationship with my middle daughter, we didn't have one for like 10 years. So she was mad at me because I wanted her to go, and she didn't understand why. And it wasn't until the third ceremony near the end of it where she finally started to break through. And she wants to visit it again, but she hasn't. But so we did that, and like me and my wife, we brought him, dropped him off, picked him up on Sunday, and immediately my daughter, she realized that I wasn't just being this overbearing, protective, jealous father. I was just really actually loving her and trying to protect her and to show her to how to be a person with values and ethics and all that stuff. So that happened, and then I did that was in September of 23, and then December 23 I did the Hero Dose of Mushrooms here, which that was so I had quite a bit of visions, and what that actually ended up putting my thought processes on my spiritual thought process. Like, I went from having faith where, and I don't know if I'm saying this correctly or not, but I don't have faith anymore. And I don't have faith in God anymore is because I know God. So some people say, well, it's still called faith. It's like, well, no, it's not faith, because faith is something, it's something that you have to faith because you don't really know. Well, because I know that God is real, Jesus is real. Jesus was here on earth, kicking the dirt, running around just like we do. And, so that like cemented my thought process and all that. And it kind of, and it pushed me towards self-education to understand the Bible more, to understand Jesus's life here on earth, and then and also how that. What's more important about all that stuff is how that applies to our life today, and how we should conduct ourselves.
Right.
That for me is real important, because I've got my 3 kids, my grandkids. I want to be able to understand how to communicate our values, our ethics, our morals, effectively, but also give reasons why behind all that. Just empty promises or empty threats and stuff like that. No, there's this behind all that.
Right.
So that's real important to me. So, so then I went to Ecuador, and I went back, talked to my tattoo artist, and like in 2023, he didn't share a lot with me about ayahuasca. He just said he did it. But so then when I went back in 2003, I was talking to him about it. He's like, I've been doing ayahuasca now for 10 years. And like he's going, and I went to the place where he used to go, and went out to the jungle, and Misa YG is the name of the town. And I've seen the Maloka where he was doing his ceremonies, and it's literally just this little grass hut on the side of the hill, maybe enough room for people to sit down inside it for like maybe 10 people, but like just sitting, no mats, none of the luxuries that we have here in the United States. And I mean, it was like, I was like, holy smokes, he was doing this in this place for 10 years. I mean, it was crazy. Unfortunately, he passed away in May of 2024, so we lost him. And I wish I could. I got to share some time with him before he passed away, so he did share some things with me. And what was really crazy was that some of my same experiences that I had with ibogaine, with the psilocybin, it was like, he was like, and he's like, yep. It was like we had the same experiences. It's like, for some reason, I'm not sure why our connection was like so, the way we connected, like he was able to finish my sentences, or I was finishing his sentences. And why they were so common, I don't know why. And I wish I could understand that more. Maybe one day.
Yeah, or maybe you're not meant to. It just was.
But so that was, so I come back, and it's February of 24. And at that point, I hadn't been drinking for 6 months. I was making like big improvements on my life. just getting organized, being able to understand, that alcohol isn't important. It's really gross. My eating habits were getting better. Physical fitness was, I've always done PT, so I've always been in the gym. Or, I wasn't always, I'm not a six-pack guy, but I've always been able to, I could put on a backpack and go walk 12, 18 miles if I wanted to,
Yep.
So doing that, but trying to get some of these injuries away that just haunt me for the last 10 years. And, but I had a friend of mine that, he's been drinking, he's drinking probably like a gallon of vodka for the last 12 to 14 years, daily. From the time he got up until the time, he was going to bed was what he was doing for probably the last 10 years. But he was, but he's, my best friend, very good friend. But it was getting to a point where, for a long time, it was have a conversation with him on the phone. It's the same one that we had the week before. If I really wanted to have a real conversation with him, I'd have to talk to him in the morning before he started drinking.
Yeah.
And it was, it was really bad. And so he came down to Florida just to visit, and he came to my house, and it was him and his wife. And I told him, I was like, hey, you got to go to this ayahuasca retreat. And he's like, and at this point, I haven't done ayahuasca, only the ibogaine and the psilocybin. And he's like, I'll go if you go. And I was like, okay, let's go. And so I set it all up. I made my reservations. Boom, I'm all set. And he is still dragging his feet. And finally, one day he calls me up and he's like, hey, help me out, get on this internet and do, blah, blah, blah. And all that. So I talked to his wife and talked to him, and he gets it all set up and he's good to go. And so I think it was 1 February 2024, and it's the last weekend that Isha is going to be at Soul Quest. And I had no idea who Isha was, what this music was from Brazil. No idea, none of it. I just okay, I'm going to go and all right, there's this guy who's going to be playing music there, maybe some crazy dude from the Grateful Dead or something. Who knows? And we get there, and it's a Friday night. I drink whatever they gave me, and my buddy, he drinks his, and he ends up over in the corner having a conversation with his liver that he threw up, and
really
apologizing to it, and hasn't had a drink since.
Wow.
Yeah, and is sober. Got his life squared away, lost 50 pounds. People don't even recognize him, who he is. I have conversations with him all the time that we're adding to the conversations, not revisiting the old ones.
Yeah.
And he's the man that I knew before he got into that drinking, that routine. And he's the kind of friend you call up at 3 a.m. and he's going to go kick doors down with you.
Oh, nice.
And
what was he kind of trying to mask? What kind of pain with all that drinking?
Well, he was a National Guard guy, and he did several trips to Iraq, and he was actually a victim of an IED. Got blown up one time, and there's that, and then there's the wife issues, and then divorce, and and then just an addiction to alcohol.
Yeah.
That's so that I think the routine and the process on that, and this is where I feel what I realized was the potential to lose it and get away from it and lose control of it. It's I'm just going to drink a 12-pack or a 6-pack or a 12-pack of beer because I'm angry. I just want to chill out, relax. But what ends up happening is once you lose control of that, then you're just drinking alcohol because you're addicted to the alcohol.
Yeah.
I'm not saying that I think I was addicted to the alcohol. I just didn't realize it at the time. But I'm sure you've seen it within people. There's that fine line where, hey, we're drinking a 12-pack versus, hey, I'm waking up at 7 a.m. to, keep my brain wet.
Yeah, well, you need it. Yeah, and you could die. I don't know if people realize it, but alcoholics need alcohol to live. If they don't wean off it slowly, they can literally die. So, it's something you need to function.
One of those things, and So I'm just, I love that guy. So, and yeah, and so, but so I went there with him. He did his thing, I did mine, but it was that very first night. I drank and I didn't feel anything the first half of the night, and it actually rained on us. So we went out from out back there, and then we had to move to the inside of the Maloka, and then I got a second dose, and so I took the booster, and then I went back down, and I was just sitting there, and I was like thinking, I started really feeling it, and I really started journeying. Which really, that journey for that was. My psilocybin journey was exactly the same way as my ayahuasca journey. If I tried to compare the two, what the differences were, I can't distinguish one from the other.
Oh, really?
To me, they were not exactly the same, but they were very similar.
Okay.
I did see like some psychedelics when I was when I got up to go to the bathroom on psilocybin. It looked like I was wading through like a pond of water trying to make it to the bathroom, and I couldn't really see anything. It was just really that whole concept of like seeing psychedelics.
Yeah,
that's kind of what I was dealing with. But I went in the bathroom, went back down, laid back down. I went right back into a journey. And when I was on the ayahuasca in February 2024, it wasn't nothing really psychedelic. It was all visions and very realistic visions, and these conversations with the spirit of ayahuasca, that it's like you're here to heal, you're here to gain understanding about yourself, your life, and who you are, and it was a concept of they talk about ayahuasca being used to reconnect you to your soul. Mm-hmm. And have you ever heard of that?
Yeah.
And that's what happened to me that whole weekend. It was Friday night, the spirit of Aya just talked to me, and she's like, I'm here to introduce you to prepare your soul for the trip for this weekend. I'm like, okay, cool. And in my mind, because I didn't have the perspective of non-duality, more or less, I think I'm using the right word on that. I'm just starting to study and read about that. But because I always considered, I'd always reference my spirit or my soul in the third person. I never really thought about using it in the first person. That
Okay.
I am, that
Right.
concept of I am, and so I said, just chill out. We're preparing your soul for your journey this weekend. Just watch the music, and that's when I was introduced to Isha and his music. And I just sat there and I journeyed watching him play his music all night. And it's like ever since that night, I fell in love with that music, and I don't listen to any other kind of, I listen to Christian country because it's very, I guess maybe the frequency or the vibe off it's very similar of the music that they do in the Amazon jungle. And Isha's from the Huni Queen tribe in the same general areas, the Yawanawa.
Okay.
And just a different river a little bit further south. And incredible kid, incredible music. And so then
I fall in love
Saturday.
with the music as well. Brother, I've listened to The River 50 times on a leg workout in the gym before. I called my buddy last year. He owns a place over here, and I'm like, I just listened to The River 50 times. You told me 2 months ago at the time that I was going to do this, and I'm listening to this music. I would have told you you're out of your freaking mind.
Yeah.
But I absolutely, I listen to it all night. I have my earbuds in, and I listen to, the ayahuasca music every night, all night, for the last 14 months. It's amazing.
Yeah. There's one, the Tibetan flute healing music. I'd listened to that when I did my hero dose of psilocybin, and now I can't get rid of that. I mean, it's like if I immediately want to chill out, I'll put that on. I'll sit down or lie down, and then that whole journey comes back and allows me to relax and just kind of be calm, and I'll fall asleep to it at night sometimes, or if I'm lucky, I'll get my wife. She'll scratch my ear while I'm listening to it.
Oh, yeah. It's so soothing. It literally is so beautiful. It puts you in just this, I don't know, this transformative mood. It's unbelievable.
It's I think that's like a huge important part of the ibogaine was kind of in a clinical atmosphere, but it obviously served its purpose without a doubt.
Right.
When I was here at the house, it was very. I'm not going to say it was risky because I did it by myself, but there is a certain amount of risk, but it wasn't, to me going into it. It wasn't very spiritual, and but after listening to the music with Isha, and kind of getting and doing the ayahuasca, the music and all that, it to me it's more spiritual than just like listening to the Guns N' Roses or something.
Oh yeah. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Just let the husky out of the room.
All right.
Come on, baby. All right, sorry about that. You hurt a leg.
But it is. There's something spiritual to it, and the whole concept of doing ayahuasca is not just doing it by yourself. I think combined with the traditional music, combined with the atmosphere of people, caring people around you, and it's not just the ayahuasca all by itself.
No, not at all. It's a whole ceremonial component, and I don't know, the sacredness of the medicine. Like, yeah, I love the music. I love the prayers. I love some of the dance that they'll do. I mean, I love everything about it. I just think it's absolutely beautiful.
Yeah, and with that, so Saturday, my journey on Saturday was just a continuation from Friday, and then on my journey on Saturday night was just another continuation from Saturday morning. And when I was finishing that whole weekend, it was like the last thought process that I had going through that was, so who is your soul? And I immediately answered back that I am. And that was a perspective change for me that it was incredible, because when I'm reading, it's like I'm not just like a meat bag running around off of my ego. And that's something that we didn't really touch on too. And it's like, when you're running around and living off your ego like I did for 25 years, almost 30 years, and suddenly you're looking at yourself in a different perspective, and you're understanding that you're more than just a meat bag running off of that, understanding that you have a thought process and a sentimental, I guess your heart can be used as to apply to your life, and you can still be effective, and you can still be, you can still be, you can still be a man and use your heart to live your life.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I think it allowed me anyway. This is my biggest takeaway that I love. It's allowed me to become vulnerable, because I was never able to do so. I mean, I was just a fucking vault. I couldn't access my feelings. I couldn't even tell myself how I felt, let alone someone else. And now, brother, I've cried on the podcast. I've cried on Facebook Live. I don't care. I'm proud that I can do it now, and it shows other men that it's okay. It's exactly, Eddie Penny did it on the Sean Ryan show, and I started crying like a baby, and it shows other men that it's not weakness. It's actually strength when you feel. And listen, I was talking to a cop recently because he wants a journey, and he's like, will it make me second guess myself, or if I have to go hands on? I'm like, dude, if you have to drop someone, you will still be able to do that, no questions asked. It just puts more love and empathy in your heart. Yeah. But if you got to rock and roll, man, you'll still be getting down when you have to. Yeah, no, there's that, going through that whole thought process, there's you're still capable, but now. Still that warrior. You're capable at work. You're capable of doing what you do, but I still want to be able to come home and function. But you can't take work with you. That doesn't work. But you can take your heart, your family attitude to work and still be okay. But you still, obviously, you still have that capability that you need to conduct work and get it done. Exactly.
And sometimes be very aggressive. But and so going through that on that whole ayahuasca trip, and because really it's from the ibogaine to psilocybin, it's been a continuous storyline for me in my visions and everything. So in my experiences, and sometimes I wonder, like, am I really, like, working with the integration part of it, and meditation is a huge part of it. I got some of my best work done while meditating. And because when you're meditating, you're able to revisit and kind of review some of your journeys in your thought processes during your journeys, and then you can get a better understanding. And some people, they call them realizations or downloads or different stuff like that. But that's huge. If you're going to be one of those people who go through a ceremony and just go home and then you go back to your same routine, your same, the same approach on life, then you're probably not going to get a lot out of it.
Yeah, nothing's going to change. It's the definition of insanity, right? Doing the same thing over and over and expecting a different result. It's not going to happen.
Yeah, and and that, I would say when I had, that realization about I am, that definitely it's hard to describe to, I guess the change or the perspective that I have on life. I mean, I'm not afraid to. In some aspects, I wasn't afraid to die before either, but I'm like okay with it, I'm like, if it happens, it happens, I don't want it to happen, but, if it does, it does. But I also want to try to live life to its fullest, I want to, exactly. But what is life to its fullest? What is that to somebody? If you want to talk to my ego, that was, being that special operations soldier, being airborne qualified, being, going to combat. And that was my ego, and that was the goals that I had with my ego. But if you talk to who I am now and you talk to my heart about what's important in life, it's, my grandkids, spending time with them, spending time with my wife and my kids, and doing, I started my own business and working as a carpenter. So I really enjoy that,
Yeah.
So I guess full circle, I came back to the carpentry thing from when I was a kid,
Exactly.
And I'm trying to get a course to go up to Maine in January to learn to start learning how to do timber framing, to cut the timbers up and stuff like that, do all the joinery. To me, if I can do that, and my grandkids, they might grow up and because if I don't ever talk to them about my career in the Army, they might not ever even know about that. They're just going to know me as, my grandkids call me Peepaw.
Yeah.
They call me Peepaw the carpenter,
Yeah.
But for me, if that's who they know me as, I'm like more than happy with that. I'm like, to me, that's great.
Yeah. Absolutely.
And if I can be that to them, and I'll be more than happy, and I'll be more than satisfied with with the life I led. I don't want them to be, how it is, like when you go to the bars and the clubs, and you got their regulars, and you get that. I don't want to down a vet, but when you've got that veteran who's still wearing all his Army stuff or all his, you may even have that scenario within the police community and fire department, where they're still wearing all their badge stuff, and they're sitting at the bar every day, and they're 80 years old, and they're still trying to tell stories from 40, 50 years ago, and it's like, that's,
a different life.
There's a time and a place for that.
Yeah.
Not every day at the VFW,
No.
I don't want to be that.
And to me, the best thing you could do for your grandkids is what you're doing, being your true, authentic self. You're a healthy individual now, so you're able and capable of giving them all the love that you have, and you're helping them become, little boys to a man or little girls to a woman, and you're helping them along. You're showing them the way. You have all this life experience. So the greatest gift you could give them essentially is you. And you're doing that in a healthy form. Like, they couldn't get a better version of you than you're giving them. And it's, to me, the greatest gift you could offer is essentially everything you have, you're ready to give to them. What more could you ask for from a man?
Right. And that's, one of the things that I went through, and I think I was actually at church. I go to church on Sundays. It's called Manna Church. They've established their churches around a lot of the bases, North Carolina, here, England, and I can't remember all the other ones, but I think there's like 8 or 9 of them. And
Okay.
they tried to focus on the bases to help soldiers. And but one of the concepts that they talked about there, and I went through the thought processes with ayahuasca also, is like, so what's important and what order should that be in? And it's the order of taking care of yourself is yourself and God. Making sure you're good with God, making sure you have that relationship, make sure you understand where you're at with Him, and becoming healthy in that manner. And only then you can be healthy with your family. And then once you're healthy with your family, then you can be healthy within the community. And it's not that all 3 of those things can be going on at the same time. It doesn't have to be individual events.
Right.
It's a never-ending chore and task to take care of yourself in your relationship with God. Same thing with your family, and the same thing within the community. And so for me, I go to church, and one of the reasons why I go is because he's really. I like the way he talks about the history part of it, and his perspectives on the different parts of it. And then I also like doing my self-study, reading the Bible. I just lied there. I don't really read. I listen to my audiobooks.
Yeah.
I'll fall asleep if I try to read. So that kind of thing, and that that pulled me away from going with that thought process. It pulled me away from the self-destructive type stuff with alcohol, and since I stopped my contracting because I realized I was doing that because I wanted to go there and feel normal, and because I really don't need the money. I didn't really need the money, but it was like, for me, it was kind of adventurous, and then I could like kind of feel normal and be. But then, so I quit doing that, and I started my own business working here, and just at home. That way I can be with my wife, my kids, my grandkids, and then so the family thing, and then part of the community. I look at the people that are, veterans are part of my community. Especially veterans within the ayahuasca community, first responders. These are people who I think have put themselves ahead of, or put people before themselves.
Yeah.
And then also been operating off their egos for the last, depending on how many years they've been working, 20, 30 years. And they don't understand there's a different way.
Yep.
And, there's... one of my prayers for strength is to be able to see the truth. What is the truth? If people can ask me that, but it's like, one, seeing that God is real. That's one of the truths. Jesus was here on earth. See the truth, like just within your daily life. Being honest with yourself. Hear the truth. Speak the truth. If you can do those 3 things, you're not drinking, because that just shuts everything off. But if you can do that and communicate that with your wife and your kids, and then more importantly yourself, I think you're gonna get some different results. It's not gonna be the same old thing where you're just trying to bang your head in the wall and expect things to be better. And then it's like you give strength for your arms to carry those people who want help. Not need help, because a person really has to want help.
Exactly.
And then also just strength within your legs to continue walking the path of serving God, family, and community. And those are, I don't know how many times I've said that prayer, especially when I was in Brazil, and I was just like feeling down and out, tired, and just trying to struggle through a ceremony night. And I was just like, give me the strength to do this, And so it was, that. I don't know. I think about it. I wonder what this. If we tried having the same conversation now, just in general about living life. I wonder what my answers would have been, 20 months ago. I don't think it would have been the same.
No, not at all. I mean, I don't know about you, but I changed. I don't know. I literally feel like I was reborn in a non-religious sense 14 months ago. It's just I'm living a different life than previous, and it's a beautiful thing. And I live a life of gratitude, and that's so important for everyone. Especially guys and girls going through it. Don't think about what you don't have. Think about everything that you do have, and don't adopt that victim mentality, man. Woe is me, why me, I only have bad luck. Thank the universe for everything it puts you through. There's usually a lesson to be learned. You may not know it for a while, but there's a lesson, and you need to feel the pain, heal from the pain. You will be a healthy individual that's capable of doing anything. As we know, the only way out is through. Yeah. And you can't dull it with substances. You can't push it away. You can't run from yourself. When you look in that mirror, man, it's the only competition in life is the dude looking back at you.
Yeah, no, that's incredible. Your first event, was that at Soul Quest in Orlando?
Yeah, March 1st last year.
Yeah,
so you just missed you.
Yeah, so you were a month behind me.
Yep.
A month behind me. Yeah, and you haven't seen Isha yet, have you?
I have not.
No, you gotta him. If you get, I got a really soft spot in my heart for him because he was my first ceremony, and his music. Have you listened to? He's got a playlist on Spotify.
Okay. Yeah, send it to me. I love to hear stuff.
I'll share it with you.
I love that music.
And because you listen to him but seeing him live and stuff like that. I help volunteer at, and part of me for as far as serving the community, I like running the fires at the, I get lucky because I get to do something I enjoy doing too. So I run
fires
the fires.
Is sick. For those who ever attend and see Roy attend a fire, it's insane. I guarantee he's an arsonist on the side, but it doesn't matter, man. His fires at a ceremony, he's sick.
But it's therapy, so I don't go running around the neighborhood burning setting the woods on fire. But I just there's a spiritual part of it. Our families have been doing this for thousands of years. Men in general have. So that's like that part of it's really cool. You volunteered. You said a week or so ago. Was that your first time volunteering?
No, we volunteered. My wife and I have done it actually each time. So we were at Soul Quest last July was the first time. Then they closed shortly thereafter, and then Matt and Gretchen's place in December. And then Matt and Gretchen's last week. Yeah.
So you understand that too. I mean, volunteering and helping people go through their ceremony. I mean, it's you're not that you're helping them go through it. You're holding space for them. You're holding a safe space for them. For me, I mean, it's incredible. I mean, it's like I'm sitting here having a conversation about my journey and how my life has changed and everything. But Isha was there holding space for us and conducting the ceremony. And I will never forget that person. So like potentially when you're helping people and and they're going through the ceremony, and if you're not putting your best foot forward, you might lose an opportunity where you might really change somebody's life in some form or manner. You never know what it might be. It might be as simple as them just looking at you, and it might be a change in their life that's significant enough for them to never forget it. So I feel it for me, in some ways, volunteering is as good as just lying on the mat and enjoying a journey.
I think it's beautiful. I was sitting there, actually, I had that exact thought the other night. Two people were visibly going through it, and I'm like, I am literally watching these people changing their lives right before my eyes. Like, it's so powerful to me. I don't take it lightly at all. Yeah, no, it is. For me, it's incredible. And I try to, if I'm in and about town and stuff like that, at first I was like really shy about trying to share stuff like this with them. But now sometimes I just don't really care anymore. I'm just like, if you're gonna think I'm crazy, I don't care, whatever. One, they're not even gonna affect my life anyways. Yeah, exactly. Either way, who cares? And if they, and if some form or manner they are affecting my life, I'm just like, whatever. Then it's not meant to be. Exactly. But the potential to change someone else is they just overhear you.
Yeah.
Hey, I heard about that one time. Can you tell me about it? Like, potentially, you just saved someone's life. Like, it's just, I don't know. It's such a powerful, there's so many powerful dynamics at play here.
Yeah, and like my friend, he did it. Well, he's done 4 ceremonies. He did one veteran one, and then he did the weekend with Isha, and he hasn't done it since in over a year. And he's just killing it,
That's awesome.
I've done a few more than that, but for me, I've kind of curiosity got me, and I love this concept. It was I'm 50 years old, and I've towed the line for the last 30 years. I've got maybe 20 or 30 left, so hang on, because it's going to get a little weird.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. That's great.
Yeah. So, I don't. I've read some books. I've watched a lot of the videos. Different universities doing their studies, and this isn't the stereotypical kid like when we were growing up in high school. You remember the burnouts versus the jocks in high school.
Oh yeah.
That this isn't that. You know.
Far from.
Yeah, far from it.
Extremely spiritual.
Yeah, and so for someone to sit down and take the time, I just wish sometimes it wasn't so expensive.
Yeah.
But there is a cost behind it, because you get when people are holding space for you, the ayahuasca costs money, the site costs money. There's all this stuff behind it. So.
Bills have to be paid at the end of the day.
Yeah, it is what it is.
Exactly.
And if somebody really is serious about it, they'll work and they'll figure something out.
Yeah, absolutely. So speaking of which, if someone wants to get in touch with you, how would they go about it?
Go through you. And
right.
If you share I'm fine with you sharing my number.
Yeah, I would obviously check with you prior to, but if anyone wants to get in touch with Roy to talk further, just hit me on my Insta, the Resilient Warrior 5778, and I would definitely put you guys in touch. Brother, it's been 3 hours. I can't believe it. I just looked at the time. That's crazy how fast it flew. It's been an unbelievable talk.
Hopefully, you can break down some of my endless conversation, but rambling on and shorten it up a little bit. But
yeah, not at all.
But no, I really do appreciate this opportunity, and I want to give a shout out to the guys. Just one little thing about me going to Brazil, and I went there to do the dieta for 30 days to experience the Yawanawa culture, and I went there with Herman and Mike and Derek and Eric and Dan and those 6 guys and Mark also, but those 6 guys, like going through that event with them it's a life changer, and so as you're sitting down and you're helping out the community, I think maybe one day you should start thinking about it.
Yeah, we'll see if I get that call.
Those are. What I'm feeling and what's happening is, as I'm going through this process and I'm within the community and stuff, I'm creating friends that I feel that are like they're going to be friends forever. So
yeah,
those 6 guys, without a doubt, it was incredible, and I love those guys. So, and as you go along with this, on this trail that you're taking right now, you're going to see, you're going to think about that, and you're going to consider it. I got that feeling, but
oh yeah,
you won't be
doubt.
disappointed. You might get skinny though.
Yeah, Eric was telling me it was like 50 pounds. Like, holy shit, bro.
I lost 40 pounds. I put immediately, once I started eating regular, I put on like probably about 15, 20 pounds. But like after everything was like baseline back to normal, I lost like 20 pounds, which was, I feel good.
Yeah, that's fantastic.
Yeah,
absolutely.
But
we'll see what the future has in store for me in that respect. But I definitely, it's not something that I would not consider. So we'll see. We'll see how that goes.
No, but especially if you've got a veteran and something like that, because sometimes on the perspectives I've had, especially when it comes to combat, and they want somebody to talk to. I don't have I mean, you can find me on. I think I'm on your Facebook too. But if you find me on those different avenues or Instagram and stuff like that, I don't even know what my Instagram address is.
That's great.
I don't use it very much. I mostly just Messenger and then text messages. But if it's a veteran specifically, I mean, absolutely without a doubt. It doesn't matter if they call me at 2 a.m. I'm definitely more than willing to help someone out. But that's the key thing. If they're wanting to help and they reach out, they deserve to be heard and need to be helped. And then obviously, they need to take our advice seriously though too. And if that means to sit down and put the bottle down and or to put whatever down and go to the emergency room, then that's what they need to do. So, you know the deal. All right, Mike.
Absolutely. All right, Roy, again, thank you so much, brother. It was great having this podcast, but it just literally felt like a talk for, between two buddies. So hopefully we change someone's life. It's the way I feel about every one of these. And, brother, I will definitely be seeing you hopefully soon. Definitely be speaking to you soon.
July.
Okay, absolutely. Definitely, I'm looking forward. Guys, Roy Anderson, American hero, former Green Beret. If you want to get in touch with him, go through me. I'll put you guys in touch. And just fabulous talk, brother. Again, thank you for everything.
All right, man. Out here.
If you guys like what you saw, hit like and subscribe, and I will see you all soon.